so narrow, and just the way the radius of the corner goes, it is really easy to overestimate how fast you can go through there on the inside trying to make moves there. That's why it's actually a corner that's semi-difficult to make passes at. If you can't get fully alongside in the braking zone, it is really, really difficult to properly commit there and not push wide out into the traffic you're trying to get by.
It's really a tricky corner when you're in that multi-class traffic as well. Don't forget that with the multi-class traffic involved different speeds, different cornering speeds. I just think that prototype just carried a little bit too much speed into the corner, and that's what caused it to go deep in, and that's why they then ended up getting clipped by that Porsche 911 number car. But the Porsche Redline car, Porsche 24 driven by Redline, they are still in the lead, but only 3 seconds ahead now of your Red Bull Racing Esports car, Freddie Rasmussen. And Freddie has been doing some good laps on his last lap of 56.3, so not as quick as he has been doing, but he's seeing the opportunity come along. Is that driver Freddie Rasmussen? And we know how quick it can be, and it's now all in part of the battle here.
And I mean, really, what a who's who right now ahead of this GTE division, Paul. You have Alexei Usyk-Yakola, who I don't want to say he's on the back end of his sim racing career, but Alexei had a period where he was one of the best drivers on the sim. He still is one of the best drivers on the sim, but I remember back 3, 4, 5 years ago in the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series, Alexei had a period where he was kind of the primary number 2 almost to Gregor in terms of what he's able to do in that in the old F1 series that we used to do. Then you have Fredrik Rasmussen, who is arguably, he definitely had a period where he was the best GT driver on the sim, but I definitely think he's not quite there anymore. Definitely have the likes of Josh Rogers and maybe even Max Benecke that have kind of overrisen him. Maybe even his teammate is Sebastian Job, you can toss him into the mix there as well. And then you have Max Benecke in P3. It really is a who's who right now inside of the top 3 in a lead fight that is slowly closing in with a damaged leader, a BMW that's recently had a mistake, and a Team Redline car that's on a recovery drive and is only about 10 seconds off the lead. Paul, yeah. Or Justin, someone.
Yes, absolutely. Was part of me there on that one, but either way, yeah, he's been having an aggressive drive, and it's just been that type of a race where to be up the front, it feels like, and is proven, it seems, just about by the way the drivers have been doing and running, experience matters to be able to be up at the front. And that experience helps you build a fast car, be able to fine-tune it, be able to set up for the bumps. And the longer you're on the surface, the more likely you know its nuances. Yes, you have to adjust to changes, as we talked about earlier on in the stint of the broadcast. But at the same time, that experience does cross over. It's the adaptability, in turn, that helps you continue to build your career if you are a veteran, as that has been on in sim racing as long as the driver that's up in front of his class.
We have all sorts of fights heating up as well. Keeping an eye on a couple battles. P3, P4, and prototypes. Those are the pair of Apex Racing teammates that have settled P3, P4. They're only separated by a second and a half on the racetrack, and they are trading lap times back and forth. And matter of fact, it's Peter Berryman, the 91. That was the car that was sitting in fourth for a while. They've recently passed that number 90. The number 90, of course, was a car that was leading just a while ago, really only an hour and a half, and they have fallen over that course of time from the race lead all the way down to P4. The other fight to keep an eye on, 3 seconds is currently the gap between Vendaval Sim Racing Green and William Esports Chill Blast Dominic Staub. That's coming down by about 4 or 5 tenths a lap on average, couple times slower, couple times quicker, but it's currently only 3 seconds to gap. So Paul, I know you have to leave soon, but you're choosing a terrible time to go because fights are heating up and down the racetrack in all 3 of our categories.
Yeah, it's absolutely sensational, isn't it? So I'm absolutely loving this battling out there on track, and these guys, they're giving us absolutely everything here in this one. And to say there's still 3 hours 41 or 42 minutes as Josh Rogers, your race leader, comes onto pit road. Basically, it's been a cracking part to this race, and I've been furiously typing messages to somebody that I'm meant to be going to help out or something, basically saying, can you just give me 10 minutes? Okay, 10 minutes more. So I'm coming close to the end of what I could get, but I've got about 5 minutes, I think, here, so, and then I will need to be done.
Things are dicing up 9th and 10th in GTE. Marin Kolak just took the spot away from the Core Sim Racing GTE car, but it's going to be Carl Jansen who wants it back. But Marin able to fight back using a Daytona prototype as a pick through Cunningham and on the run towards Tower Curve. They just swapped spots going to hairpin. It's a huge gaggle of cars as well. You see a couple prototypes have already gone by. There's another one stacked up behind that is going to be looking to get through as they run in towards Le Mans. So we have 4 different fights we're trying to keep track of right now. Through the sequence at Bishop, you can see there Marin Kolak a little bit tight. Carl Jansen able to just hook it up a little bit better onto the back straightaway, and immediately goes Marin Kolak defensive and down this back straightaway, 3 wide with a Daytona prototype cycling through, and Carl Jansen is going to try to do it the long way round at Sunset Bend, one of the better corners to try it, but here comes the cutback into the final corner. Kolak way too hard on the brakes, and Jansen into P9, Justin.
And it looked like he was getting tight. You mentioned that in Le Mans. It definitely looked like that way to me, too. I nearly thought Kolak was going to push up into the core machine. But I think he noticed that he was getting tight and took advantage of it. And that's what veterans know. Jansen seen him push up, just took advantage, went for the crossover. That was the smarter of the 2 moves. Allowed the tighter driver to just sail up the racetrack. And now, in a looser condition, it seems for Jansen in terms of the handling, he can try to run.
Yeah, Carl's going to do everything he can to try to open this gap up from Marin Kolak. The gap is a little bit tight still, so one maybe big step of the draft, and Marin might just have an opportunity. I'm still keeping an eye on my timing screen and a couple of the other fights we have been sort of logging and keeping track of, but this one is still the tightest out there on the racetrack. We'll cut the cameras over to some other ones when they start to heat up. This run into Cunningham, Paul, I think might be decisive in whether or not Carl's able to run away here. Marin's definitely a little bit braver on the brake going into that corner, but a little bit of a better exit there for Carl.
Well, that's it. It's all about whether it's the run into the corner or out of the corner. Right now, you want to get the run out of the corner at the moment, because you only need that run into the corner and be better into the corner if you're actually making the overtake into there. But on the exit, you carry that speed around and see how we go. Can he be close enough to get in the draft here out of Le Mans corner, down the back straightaway towards Sunset Bend as the sun is slowly setting in the sky here? I don't think he's close enough to make any move yet, though.
Yeah, and it actually happened again, Paul. I mean, we saw him last time when he was coming through that penultimate corner, turn 16. He just pushed tight, and that's what really set up the entire sequence down the back straightaway and through this turn 17 to allow Carl Jansen. Is just the fact that Marin was tight off that final corner, and it happened to him again. So I feel like Marin is, you know, maybe they have a little bit of damage on that car or just in the setup. I know that little right-hander looks relatively unintimidating, but I will say, in my experience, that is actually one of the most important corners on the racetrack when it comes to setting up the car, because if it's just got a little bit of push dialed into it, you're not making that corner, and that's the longest stretch of straightaway on the racetrack.
It certainly is, and it's one of the more important corners out there on the circuit. And really, these drivers, they know they need to hook that final that right-hander up at Le Mans before going down that back straightaway, because of the run it gives them. Yeah, it's crucial, and it seems to be that it's not working out. We seem to have lost Movano from your prototypes.
You're right. Not really sure when that would have happened. Yeah, something's happened to Movano, relatively recent. I am thinking it might have been some sort of technical issue. It would have been Marcus Hamilton, so something has happened to them. Apparently they've had some sort of tech-related issue. So Movano, who's running P5, that's a big heartbreaker for them. But Paul, know that you've got to get going, so we're going to give you the opportunity to give your couple of final thoughts, and we'll get you out of here, and Justin and I will have it from here. So what's your take thus far on what we've seen and what we're going to see in the next 3.5 hours?
I mean, basically, what we're going to see the next 3.5 hours is going to be really the opportunity of drivers being able to push on now, make those strategies count. We're going to see how those strategies pan out in the final hour of this race as well. Traffic will become a big factor in this race as well. Let's not forget that, because these drivers, they're getting so involved in traffic out there already, those final few hours are going to have a big effect there. I think the prototype battle, I think the Commander car is going to be safely in the lead now. Berryman and Johan Harp in the two Apex cars are battling it out, and Mitchell Dionnis may be in a position to catch up to try and get another podium position. Your GTE battle is looking really intriguing for the lead after that mistake for Freddie Rasmussen on his opening lap on this stint, and that GT3 battle, it looks really close as well. It's all going to come to a head towards the end of the race. I wish I was staying on this, but I really do need to head on out. But thank you everybody for having me along.
There was Paul Smith's beautiful mug out here on the broadcast. You can see him as well over at twitch.tv/SmilerBull, streaming whatever variety of things he streams, including sim racing. I know he does his own personal stream for Monday Night Skippies and the like. You may even see him poorly racing some touring cars from time to time. But thanks for joining us, Paul, and you have a good rest of your evening, and I hope you enjoyed the plug.
Yeah, I certainly did. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So let's continue on here, and we will monitor this fight in GT3 because Williams Esports has been mighty quick, and the gap is only 2 seconds right now on the racetrack. Lap 244, Dominic Staub was 0.8 of a second quicker. He's been hampered a little bit, Justin, by some traffic the last handful of laps that Max Esterson has been able to get through, but you just look at that the right rear corner of that wing for Max Esterson right now. That car is hurt, and it is not carrying the speed it was a little bit on in this race, a little earlier on rather in this race. Gap opens up a little bit off of turn 17 because still tons of traffic for the Williams Esports Chill Blast car, but that gap I think is going to close in a rapid way when eventually Dominic Staub is able to get through.
Yeah, and get up towards the slipstream as well. All these cars that he had to let on through, that's going to balance back when they have to get by the class leader. It's just he's reaching them in a kind of awkward position, or they're reaching him, I should rather say, along with interclass traffic. So this is right now some good speed that we're seeing from them. It's just he can't get anywhere even when there's the interclass traffic because they're fighting.
Yeah, tons of interclass traffic here is costing tons and tons of time here for your second place running GT3 car, and you see him just absolutely spamming the lights because this 4th and 5th place battle in GT3 is absolutely heated up. And up the inside now for P4 goes the Core Sim Racing Audi, and right around Kane Halliburton on the inside goes, who is that driving for Core Sim Racing? Marius Gollenbeck up the inside. Look at this queue of cars up into Tower Corner. I see Daytona prototypes. There's even a couple GTE cars at the back end, and it's headed by a pair of GT3s, including your second place running Williams Esports Chill Blast car. So everyone is trying to cycle through here and fight while your second place running car, Williams Esports Chill Blast, is losing tons of time. This is heartbreak for them right now.
And it's also heartbreak and frustration for Red Bull Racing Esports too, because both of them were gaining time before this cluster. Now they're all essentially stuck. They don't have anywhere really they can go, and you're seeing that frustration now with the near 3-wide move. Somebody has to go, and for Rasmussen, he's lost a ton of time now on his battle for the race lead. And now the same thing still is going on still for Williams Esports, because they still have yet to make the pass on the interclass traffic. They're near dead even in pace.
2.5 seconds is what was lost for Dominic over that last lap or so with all the traffic. However, like Justin said, that could hypothetically cycle through, but that traffic has somewhat strung itself out. It's not a big pack of cars anymore. It's kind of a single train. And that said, after this first one, I believe that might be which Daytona prototype it is. It's the Leo Racing Team DP2. It's Ale Pioti behind the wheel. They're going to be the first one to get by your GT3 class leader and cycle their way through Big Bend on the run of the hairpin. Here comes some more prototypes and GTE cars as well, and still your second place running GT3 car trying to get through. The fight for P4, P5 now only just going in the rear view for Williams Esports Chill Blast, so huge drama for them as they're going to hope and pray that this pair of GTE cars and this prototype holds up Max Esperson in some sort of way.
Yeah, that's the only hope right now, is those same types of struggles happen, but as you mentioned, they're very strung out, extremely strung out now by just about a car every, let's say, 300 meters. It's not as bad as where they're going 2, 3, 1. So now this goes in the trend of you're losing time, net time now, potentially, in this situation, if you are a lot of these competitors. And mind you, too, there's still that fight. That's still going to potentially continue on here between Golombek and Howie Vernon.
Yeah, you're right, and there's all sorts of fights still. I mean, this entire train of cars, I think, has every leader on the racetrack on it. You have your GT3 leaders in this fight. There's a couple prototypes inside of the top 5, and just cycled through, we've seen not only the Red Bull Racing Esports car just get by the current leading GT3 machine, but a couple laps ago, the Porsche 24 driven by Redline, who does currently lead this race, cycled through. It seems like every car that's in an important fight right now, Justin, and is really pushing hard, is just on the same bit of racetrack for about the last 90 seconds, and that created some excitement. It stretched a couple of fights out, but it stacked a couple of other fights up.
Yeah, and that's the importance of traffic management, especially in those types of fights. The quicker you can get through, the more advantageous. But you have to time out your right positions to make those moves. It's hard to time it out when there's a train of 7 or 8 that are all under a blanket. So, at the very least, the prototype leader is still got a massive advantage.
Yeah, you're right about that. 38 seconds right now, the gap from Viras Cuentas in 4, and currently running second Apex Racing Team 91. However, the fight for second and third is tight between those two team cars. Peter Berryman in the 91, only a second and some change ahead of teammate Johan Hart, although that gap seems to be continuing to stretch. And we've seen sort of the advantage here, Justin, back and forth between those two Apex cars. One set of time, it's been the 91 who has the advantage. Another set, it's been the 90. And I don't think they're done with their inter-team mingling just yet. Michele Constantini really has seemed like the hot shoe of all the Apex drivers I've seen today, and he's going to be key to get back in that car, I think, relatively soon. Johan Hart is currently working about 60 laps into his seat.
Yeah, they're right identical, and this was around that same distance before. Constantine jumped in the car in the previous stints and absolutely elevated the performance of the car. So I'm curious to see when they do bring them, if they do, I should rather say, how much time they can try and pick up, because it's still going to essentially be a very difficult task to close up the gap, because the gap right now is massive. It's about 38, 40 seconds. When the last time Constantine jumped in the car and started to lift it forward, it was only 20 seconds. So it's something that the team has to definitely be discussing in terms of what can they do to try and close up such a massive gap.
And talking about some of our other fights, Justin, I want to look right now. It's not a close fight, but I want to look at the gaps in our lap gaps graphic, Hugo, for second and third in GTE. Frederick Rasmussen and Maximilian Benecke. It's a 14-second gap, but look at the pace that Max Benecke has had over his competitor of Frederick Rasmussen. 3.1 seconds on lap 255. That's when we just saw that huge cluster of cars form up. Then he was 7/10 quicker and then 3/10 quicker. So Max Benecke here, Justin, 3.5 hours to go, is consistently faster. I think they're within the window with 3.5 hours to go to reel this 13-second gap in. On top of the fact that they may have some pit strategy to play as well, we'll have to keep an eye here closing into really up until the final 2 hours of the race. Will be our real indicator on what pit strategy looks like, but Team Redline Black still very much on top of this. And oh, by the way, while that's happening, Freddie is still chasing down Alexei Yakola in the current leading GTE car. So that is going to be a fight that's going to heat up here and might even bring that gap, who's currently second and third, down a little bit closer.
At this point of the race, too, it's kind of a situation, you hit upon it a little bit, where you can't afford any mistakes. Any mistake can throw you out of the chance to step on the podium or gain a lot of track position. So at this rate, you cannot afford to be held up for too long, can't afford to go off the track, You have to be hyper-focused like we're seeing with the driver on your screen at the Gwenda house. You gotta stay focused on what's in front of you on the track. Can't let anything distract you or anyone, say, jump in front of you on that camera.
Sort of 3D. It's Philip Stan you see in the background, by the way. One of the team managers. You know how in football a lot of times on the replays they've got the technology to do that weird, almost augmented reality 3D kind of look around of replays. We need that here going through the Coanda room as we pan from side to side.
I wonder how much that would cost, though. That's the thing. I don't know how expensive that would be.
I don't know if it'd be. I mean, would it be more expensive than flying people from like Australia and the UK to live in a team house? It maybe or maybe not, because that stuff definitely gets expensive. We need to give them a shout out though. So twitch.tv/virtual racing school. You can keep up with those cars as they roll on the racetrack. There's a ton of interest in people watching those sort of private streams that exist, and that's definitely going to be an interesting one, especially with so much talent in a single room there, a single house there, all operating. Really makes things quite fun and quite interesting. Back to now keeping an eye on these lead fights that are closing in. Dominic Stabe has, in a quick way, started reeling Max Esterson back in. Remember, this gap only a couple laps ago was stretched out to nearly 5 seconds. Lead battle now 1.1 seconds on the racetrack between Esterson and Dominic. So even though it's a little bit of probably frustration dealing with that traffic, Justin, he would really easily, once he got clean track, he really went uninterred, uninhibited, I'll say, and reeling that gap back down in a big way. Although that said, horrible run onto the back straightaway.
Yeah, indeed here, and that's the main thing I was thinking about at the same time. I think you were thinking is clean air definitely shows the difference in speed. The draft in traffic is what can muddy it a little bit. So that back wing is just causing some trouble where the difference in lines, yes, you can take the different lines, was talked about between you earlier with Paul into Sunset, but I don't think the preferred line is where the marbles are at to make it difficult to grip the track. And those are some of the sections where that damage, I think, might be starting to pop up a little bit, and where Williams Esports has the advantage right now because of how things are going right now in this race.
I know we had a little bit of an audio bug there, so our apologies on that one. I just want to make sure it gets in when the mics are working. If you want to see more of those virtual racing school, the room cameras, the purple room, which they call the purple room, but now their car is on purple, so it makes me a little bit sad. But twitch.tv/virtual racing school, you can check that out for the races that they're competing in. So either they got a bonus shout out or they missed out on the first one with Hugo doing Hugo things. But regardless, we'll keep an eye on these fights. 1.8 seconds currently the gap lead in GT3. 1.7 seconds currently the gap lead in GTE. And actually, Freddie's picked up that race lead. What's happened to Alexi? He had a horrible lap that was 3 seconds off the pace. But Red Bull Racing Esports now lead in GTE, and we have missed it.
Yeah, something going on with the number 911 machine, and trying to take a look back as Red Bull Racing Esports was able to get the advantage, and this was in Sunset. And if we can go back, it would be the previous time by in Sunset where the pass was made because of a loss of traction. Yes, right here. You're going to see it. We're heading in from entrance to apex. The bumps that were talked about a little bit in the difference in materials, boom on the bumps, around it goes on the right rear, and that slide lost them the lead.
If you see that Red Bull car just shifting through on the inside. Now that red line Porsche, you see that red line green car, that is not the red line black car that we have been talking about currently sitting third in class. The red line black car is the one who's currently third in class, so that's just another red line car that's cycling through. I want to make sure there's no confusion there, but that is the lead loss for Porsche 24 driven by Team Redline, and it's Team Red Bull Racing Esports that now currently lead, and it's going to be Mr. Max Benecke who's going to be chasing down his teammate, and that's currently a 12 second gap actually rather at the moment, but that's been coming down in big ways. This GTE fight still so very close. Is actually, we look away from one fight and another one change hands as well. Vendaval has come down pit road, and Dominic Stave now leads in GT3. Don't believe there was a pass there. I think that was purely just on the pit strategy. I think Dominic came down pit road.
Yeah, he absolutely did come down pit road for what appears to be a scheduled stop for Max Esterson. And it looks like they're going to elect to take tires, so this could be a big call here. Going to be interesting to see what Red Bull does. Williams does.
I think it's going to be tires here, Justin, if I'm honest. I know that, you know, I kind of started the discussion a little bit ago about what's going to happen when the sun goes down. I think track temps are still slowly trickling down. I'm seeing 74 degrees Fahrenheit. I think I remember saying at one point to you, Paul, that the track temp was 77 degrees Fahrenheit about 30 or so minutes ago. So the track temp is starting to come down in a pretty big way, and the sun is still up. So once that sun gets closer to the horizon and even down below the horizon, we're going to see that track temp really fall in a big manner, and that's going to make the tire life a lot more effective for all these guys. I think this pit stop, I think you're going to be taking tires, and I think probably the next one as well, because I don't think you're going to want to be risking a triple stint. I think a double is about the longest you're going to want to go here at Sebring, because this is, you know, we generally talk about, you know, the race surface in terms of temperature, Justin, but, you know, the race surface here at Sebring is old, it's concrete, it's bumpy, it's abrasive. It is not good on tires, and I don't think you want to push a triple here.
I hadn't even thought at all of a triple. That's how unrealistic that is here at this racetrack, because of that exact reason. Those tires would not last the way drivers would hope. But if you try the double stint at this point of the race, you're hoping that they don't close up at about a gap of 30 seconds. But here's the thing. I've seen races multiple times in this type of scenario, sometimes a little bit hotter in other cases, where the gap is completely dissipated by the end of the run. That's kind of the gamble you have to try and weigh in your head. Is it worth it to try that now, or do you wait until a later portion of the race to try that call?
That's really the big thing. The fight P4, P5, though, still close here in category. We have seen these two come nearly to blows already, Justin. You see those pair of Audis all over one another. 0.2 of a second now the gap. Marius Gollenbeck had picked that spot up a little while ago, and now Kane Halliburton is close. He might have an opportunity to use this prototype as a pick, and Marius Gollenbeck going to be forced off the apex. Kane Halliburton sees an opening, but you can't make it stick there. The run off of Cunningham is just too tight to be able to make that stick, but it will allow him to close in about another half car length through Tower, and Gollenbeck's made a mistake. We've seen that a lot from another number of drivers in the last 45 minutes to an hour. Kane Halliburton had to lift way out of the throttle, headlights flashing because he's frustrated. He wants P4 through Bishop. Does he throw it up the inside on this double sort of S's section on the run towards Le Mans? Answer is going to be no, but the run of Sunset, Justin, should be where the move comes in, and Kane has to turn in better.
Yeah, that was a decent turn in, and he's got the slipstream. So if I was Core, and you're thinking about trying to stretch this a little bit longer, which they are in that window, I go defensive. Surprised they didn't try and go for the defensive line. They're going to let this position go.
And I think that's a good move there by Marius Gollenbeck to let that slip. Kane Halliburton up into P4, and Marius did not really fight with that whatsoever if they're trying to think about fuel strategy. We are coming up on our pit cycles here shortly, probably in about the next 10 or so minutes. Maybe 15. There have been a handful of cars coming down on towards pit road, but remember, Justin, we've seen a number of teams and a number of drivers going past the 1 hour mark. I think back to around the last time at pit stops, we were about 4 minutes, or 4 hours and 7 minutes, 4 hours and 8 minutes, and you see actually the Porsche 24 driven by Redline, they're coming on for full service. Yanni Vecchio is going to be the new driver in that car, but I think we're going to see a number of cars pushing to about the 3 hour mark for this current cycle.
That's at least the preference, in my opinion, is to be able to split it up towards the end, and we talked about it a little bit. And it's the thing is, with the amount of drivers that have gone off cycle, it's gotten to where there's a pit stop, it seems, every 2 laps in the various different classes. So many of these drivers might be in a case where they might have to potentially take an extra stop. It's going to be tight. I'm just going to say it's going to be tight, even for this team in Porsche 24 driven by Redline, who, mind you, was just leading a little while ago.
Yep, they just come off of pit road in the 911, and they head their way back out onto the racetrack. Another close battle is 7th and 8th in GTE. That is 0.4 of a second. Radicals Online Track Racer BMW M8. Fabrice Cornelis behind the wheel of that car. I know Fabrice had sort of an extended break away from the sim for a while. Good to see him back and racing for a team like Radicals. That's a lot of power going to a team like that could really use the driver talent. MSI Esports GTE and Mark Perez, though, they're also just behind. I think this position actually has just swapped hands here, Justin, because by the looks of it, Fabrice has really run away here from MSI, and actually this might be somewhat pit stops inhibited as well. I think Fabrice is pit. No, he hasn't pit for a while. So Fabrice, he's about, I think, 2/3 of the way through his stint right now, but he shouldn't be on pit road too soon.
Yeah, that battle you're referring to as massively different pit cycles at this point, but that's just, again, the type of race we have seen in some of this point where it's going to come down to strategy. And if you've kept yourself on the road, can't afford bobbles like that that we just seen, of merely a snap towards the grass.
Yeah, you don't want to be making those mistakes, especially that end of the racetrack. It gets pretty dicey. Especially, I mentioned the curves a little early on, Justin, when we had that incident with the, I can't remember which car it was. I think it may have been Mitchell, when he kind of climbed that curve turning into Tower. That's not the only curve on the racetrack that's really, really sketchy to hit. Even, right there, turns 3, 4, and 5, as you work your way into Big Bend. There are curves there, but they feel like they're about 10 feet tall, and if you want to touch them, you kind of just want to barely graze them. If you kind of put the whole car onto the curb, it really affects the balance of the car because they elevate whatever, side of the car is actually hitting them by so much. It's not like they're level with the racetrack. They're about 2 or 3 inches, stacked up. And sometimes that can help you, but in a few places around this racetrack, the entry and the mid corner of Tower and really the end of the first sector, a couple of the places where that's evident.
Yeah, there's a lot of cases, absolutely, in those exact sections where you touch the curb, you're spinning. And there's many tracks where that can happen, but that's just the nature when it comes to these types of cars, where you have to be careful in those types of scenarios here as more traffic comes on through.
Get more traffic cycling through here. You see that is the VRS machine. Working through some light traffic. That is Mitchell DeYoung getting around. It's actually your second place running GTE car now. Actually, no, I take that back. Fourth place running GTE car now. Williams Esports BenQ have settled their way up to third. Have they pulled a strategy move, or have they not? They've not yet come down pit road. So actually, Williams Esports BenQ here, Justin, getting some of the best fuel economy of a lot of the teams in this category. Team Redline Black as well, doing very good on the mileage, as well as Team Red Bull Racing Esports. So your top 3 right now still yet to come down pit road, but Williams Esports getting the fuel economy they're getting compared to a couple of the other cars ahead of them. It may actually be a factor here, being able to go 3, 4, 5 laps longer than a lot of the other cars they're fighting with.
And again, in some cases you want to have to balance that in. I think at this point, it's going to come down to who's got the best fuel mileage. You definitely don't want it being the case where you run out of fuel, obviously. But if you can find a way to limit the amount of time on track in terms of pit stop deltas and so forth, it can be interesting as it's still a train around the track as these battles continue to shape out here, Randy.
Yep, and if you guys have enjoyed this Sebring weekend that we've had here on Race Spot TV, we kicked it off with Friday Prime Time yesterday, which is basically a preview race, a preview of this race. We have a 45-minute sprint with this exact car combination around this exact racetrack. Then we have the 12-hour today. Tomorrow we will have the 90 minutes of Sebring coming at you with one of the brand new cars on the iRacing service, the all-new Porsche GT4 car. That's going to be paired up in some mixed class mingling with the Audi TCR front-wheel drive. That's going to be mimicking, of course, the Michelin Pilot Challenge. That is going to be a fantastic race, Justin, because it's all new cars, and you've had me going, me rambling on now in terms of strategy. It's really big unknown. We don't know too much about what that Porsche GT4 can do. I'm sure a lot of the teams that have done testing, probably have some semblance of an idea, but you're going to be dealing with teams that don't have setups quite refined yet to the point that they would probably like. And you're going to have, not only that, you're going to have the Audi teams who are in an interesting situation because that car has got a little bit of a fuel range buff. In the past, talking about teams that are running in the Neo Endurance Championship, they recently had a race at Circuit de Catalunya. In the Neo race, they were doing 70 minutes. Since the update to the fuel mileage, they're now doing nearly 100 minutes on a tank of gas. at Barcelona in the same car, that's going to be a big question mark for those teams as well, because that's going to really toss up in the air the strategy of what you might be able to work with. So that's going to be a hugely fun race to tune into.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of question marks, absolutely, and it might be a case where the best teams who have been able to get enough testing together on the car and find its little nuances might be the ones that come up on top. It's definitely going to be an interesting one, absolutely, with the different strategies too, especially.
Yeah, it's going to be a ton of fun to watch. Be sure to tune in for that. Remember, it's a 90-minute race, so not going to be a ton of pit stops in that. It's only going to be a single stopper, but it's really going to be a big question on what the tire strategy is going to be for both of those cars, because the Audi TCR, we know that car is one, Justin. Being a front-wheel drive car, it has a unique sort of difficulty in terms of tire life. Anything, you're asking the front tires to both rotate the car and drive the car. And because of that, the front tires really do take a beating, and trying to make them last for 90 minutes is going to be really rough to do. And same with the Porsches as well. We're still in an unknown phase of the Porsche GT4, because we've not seen it before, of what teams are really going to have to be dealing with.
I'm curious, again, to see what happens as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the damage model was that's been a discussion point in recent months in its development across the service. Is that a part of that as well? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe it should be. I'll be honest, yes. I've been kind of focused on this the last couple of days because having a 6-hour segment of it has kind of been the main thing I'm focused on. But yeah, I think that's going to be a whole new thing to see as well. And for a lot of these sort of GT and Tin Top drivers, Justin, it's a whole new thing to deal with. Yeah, maybe some of them has messed about in the Skippy or a couple of the cars that have the new damage model. But, most of those are probably fun races, or, hey, well, let's go sling them around Irwindale and do some figure eights for fun during week 13 or something. But, that's going to be a whole new element that I know people have struggled with in the Skippy, trying to dodge some of the debris. I've seen some clips where, accidents happen in front of someone, and then someone maybe catches a suspension assembly that's come off a car, or a wing, or a nose cone that's actually damaged the car. Whole new element that a lot of these guys who maybe have only done the Tim Top racing have not had to deal with.
Yeah, there were some clips that I kept an eye on throughout from week 13 where some of the top drivers did get a chance to test things out. And that damage model, it was referenced and shown a little bit where you can have the parts, as you mentioned, fly across the track. That can potentially hurt a lot of competitors if there's a massive incident. There's the chance of the hoods popping up if you hit things hard. So there's a lot of unknowns with that too, on how hard of hits you can potentially take on the car.
Necky 16 brings up a point. Yes, there's a fuel limit, Necky. That is definitely a thing, but I'm just more talking about what, even though there is a fuel limit, you're still going to see some interesting things on essentially what teams decide to do with tires. Between the Audi, we know for a fact there's big fuel economy issues there, or excuse me, there's tire life issues there, and the Porsche is still an unknown. That's one really interesting is Luis Cornelis on, actually I think we're looking at it live as well, just slicing and dicing his way through some traffic. We're looking at the fight for 9th and 10th in the GT3 category. We're currently on board, I believe, with Vila Racing Team, their Onyx car, and it's MSI Esports. We're behind them, trying to chase them down any way that they can do so. But it's going to be a little bit of an ask, because that is a close fight. P9 and 10, or excuse me, P9 and 10 in GT3.
Oh, trouble. Williams Esports BenQ is off in the grass.
The Williams Esports BenQ. This is one of your top 5 running cars in GTE. It is a Porsche RSR. This is the number 86, Agustin Canapino. Remember, we were talking about him as being irrelevant. How did this happen? And this actually happened in similar ways to what we've seen, Justin. He actually got a little bit of oversteer on the entry into what is technically turn 3, and then he just clipped the curb, and that car just goes around.
Yeah, he burps the brakes right there, and by the time he burps that brake, that car is gone. He almost saves it, but that grass again, you even touch it a little bit as well, not just the curb. It can send you hard and swinging off towards the Armco barriers. Lots of lost time for Williams Esports BenQ, and now they've got a swarm of drivers, including for position, that are around the back bumpers.
Yeah, they do. This is actually the same batch of racetrack we were just looking at. They have now Augustin Canapino, 0.3 of a second. He's got Mark Perez, MSI Esports, right up his tailpipe. There's a handful of cars behind. Some are, actually, most of them are slower traffic, but they're the Daytona prototype getting ready to come through. But yeah, they're about to be in a very rough situation with probably a car that has somewhat overheated tires here, Justin, as well as the fact that there's some quicker traffic coming through while trying to hold off Mark Perez.
Yeah, indeed, at this point, I'm curious to see what Perez has here. He's got the slipstream. That's the obvious part. But remember, there is that fuel window we were talking about, and Williams Esports BenQ is right towards the rear portion of it, at the very least. Are those tires going to be able to hold on to the position battle after taking that slide, is the thing.
Yeah, it's going to be a really, really big question. You see that gap has come down under 0.2 of a second for 7th and 8th in the category after Augustin made the mistake. Let's see if he can get this part of the racetrack perfect, because he already made the mistake, and now he's got pressure. He threw the first part clearly, and he clipped that curb in the position you want to do so doesn't make the mistake 2 laps in a row, which is something you can occasionally see happen. A little bit of a checkup from the GT3 car. You see both of those cars go to the driver's left to get through, and let's see, Mark Perez, a little bit of the slipstream, might make a move. Watch out for that Daytona prototype. Hard dive on the outside for the 14. If he can maintain the overlap, it's a good place to be on the exit, but he can't. Augustin will defend, and here comes some prototypes.
They got to be careful here. This is going to break up the battle for the next little bit. And mind you, Tommy Oscar is also in the mix of this. And he's been very aggressive with these cars. Not been afraid to dive bomb it from 3 car lengths back. You have to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, but unfortunately for Mark Perez, look at the traffic he's getting caught up in. First prototype through at about Cunningham. Now the next one of the VRS Coanda cars is Tommy Osgaard, who currently sits 5th. They cycle through at Tower, and that is costing that MSI Porsche a ton of time. While Augustin Canapino, he's able to let these prototypes by on the straightaways. You don't really lose any time, Justin. He maybe lost a little through the entry of Bishop through the center because he had to be offline, and then into sort of the S's section before Le Mans, he maybe got checked up a little bit. But besides that, Augustin really, really did well there on the traffic to open that gap up by enough to not quite break the slipstream, but take the pressure off.
Yeah, now the speed differential is just about dead even with the slipstream for the MSI Esports machine we're following along with. So the hope, I think, at this point, again, is hope that there's an error mistake or they can try and gain back the time, because it looks like Perez is a little bit more comfortable at this point of the run to be able to enter the corners. He's been sending it about 10 feet deeper on the brakes, and even though there's the saying, slow in, fast out, he's been able to go a little bit faster in, a little bit faster out.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. And, these guys, they continue to cycle around the racetrack, are still doing everything they can to manage the gap and manage the traffic. Through Big Bend, they're now working on the run back down towards the hairpin. You see Augustin Canapino really flashing the lights, trying to get anything he possibly can. He actually couldn't see that because we were on board with Mark behind, but into the hairpin, dealing with Fulvio Berrezzini right now in the Orion Race Team HPP Audi GT3. And actually, Mark Perez still continuing to get held up. Just now going to be able to work through and open that gap up and, get by and maybe start closing this gap back down in. But, man, Augustin is managing the traffic perfectly here, Justin. 0.8 of a second from a gap that was at one point under a 10th.
Yeah, really impressive here, and shows why there was that bit of a difference before that major mistake. So we're starting to get the confidence, I think, back up now as Williams Esports BenQ at this point. Just gotta keep it going until the fuel window starts to open up to come back down pit lane in about, a couple minutes. We've seen drivers coming around this point before, so there is the chance they might start coming down pretty soon here.
And I'm going to have to ask our producer, Hugo, go to, for one of these guys, an onboard shot, either a rooftop or a nose cam, because I want to see what these drivers are having to deal with here, going down in towards turn 17. You wonder why this is called Sunset Bend? This is why. This corner looks pretty much directly into the west, right where the sun goes down. There's a couple of the other parts of the racetrack where the sun can be problematic as well, but that run into turn 17, Justin, is the big one, because you have a big, long straightaway where drivers are drafting and slipstreaming up on each other. There's all, potential for drivers to be all sorts of distracted, and this is a potential danger point. You're looking into that bright sun And if you got cars around you that you're trying to race with, it is very likely that you miss a braking point. It has happened more than once, and that is why that corner has gotten that name.
Yeah, you're squinting or holding a hand up above your eyebrows to make sure you can see properly, or else you overshoot your corner and go off towards the marbles or spin around, such as we're seeing Power Slide Motorsports actually go through some of the marbles, such as Adam Blocker here. So at this point, yeah, it can be very difficult, and that's even been something discussed when it gets dark as well, is when the headlights aren't the biggest help. If there's a lot of cloud cover, or in this case, you're starting to enter dusk in the other portion of the track, some drivers, even some of my own teammates have said before, I have a hard time seeing around the circuit. I got to find a way to brighten things up a little bit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. I mean, but you're starting to see already the track really start to get darker and darker. Part of that is there is some clouds that are partially obscuring the sun, but it is definitely just getting lower and lower into the horizon and starting to get masked by the geometry of the racetrack and of the world. So, Marc Perez able to reel the gap back in, though, to Agustin Canapino, down to 0.3 of a second, nearly 2, as they begin the run in towards Le Mans. Let's see, can they get the exit for the Ullman straightaway? Coming onto the long back straightaway, they're about even, maybe slight advantage to Marc Perez, and that's not a good place to be if you're Agustin Canapino, because Marc has the slipstream. He closes. Agustin moves defensive to the right-hand side of the racetrack, tries to cut back. Marc not quite able to get there, but can he work the cutback lane? We have seen that a couple times today, but Agustin was not too committed.
Trouble.
What do you got?
And just behind them, Alpine Eagle Racing just sent Racecraft Esports Yellow hard into the concrete.
So issues here, and is this maybe what we were just talking about? So Brian Lockwood, we've seen them have some fights here recently, and you're absolutely right, Justin. He just didn't even stop for the corner. And I almost wonder if that might have been exactly what happened going there into that final corner of the racetrack for, who is that, the number 127 into the back of Brian Lockwood. We're still keeping an eye here. We'll get a replay of this incident eventually, but look at the issue that we have here with these two still stacked up on each other.
Yeah, and somebody's going to have to make a pass somewhere at this point. You can tell by Perez and the fact he's sending it so hard. He's got the quicker pace as soon as he gets in the slipstream. That's definitely benefiting to him, and it seems like that's how the car may have been built, to try and take advantage of the speed down the Ullman straight to Sunset Bend. If you're Williams Esports, BenQ, I think you have to be careful. By the way, this is what happened to me just moments after where we started this clip here with Alpine Eagle Racing, because they absolutely sent Racecraft hard, and I mean hard, like they didn't even hit the brakes into the concrete.
I'd love to see this on board, Hugo, because I want to get an idea what the driver was seeing as they were going through the lights. You see here, it's actually not that bright from the cockpit cam, but you can see there, he just never stops. I don't know what in the world just happened there, but yeah, he just never really hit the brakes. It's just, I'm not sure. We'll get another look at this from the TV cameras. You're going to be able to see, Justin, yeah, the Daytona prototypes can stop later, but they're should be on the brakes around the same time as the GT3 cars are. And look at that, Brian Lockwood, we didn't see that when he was skidding off into the grass. So a hard hit from behind and then well out into the tires and then reversing back. That is pretty much dead area of the racetrack. So that's not him reversing back onto the circuit there. But yeah, that was a hard hit, and that was pretty bad.
Yeah, I know he was braking a little bit early into the corner, but at the same time, Alpine Eagle Racing needs to be aware of what's going on at this point. They were the faster traffic than... Wow, is all I can really say, because now Racecraft Esports Yellow is definitely cooked at this point. And maybe the thought process might have been the Audi might have moved. That was maybe one of the thoughts, was they weren't expecting him to maybe go to the inside. They were maybe expecting the Alpine Eagle Racing for them to stay on the outside. That's the only thing I can think of in that.
I mean, maybe, but the Daytona prototypes, Justin, they aren't that much quicker through turn 17. Yeah, there's a pace difference, but it's not like the pace difference between like an LMP2 car or even a modern DPI car and a GT3 car. So yeah, they may have moved over slightly, but the pace difference between the DPs is only a few seconds, and it's only a few miles an hour. I think yes, I think you could definitely say that that they moved, that the GT3 car, that Racecraft moved over. But they definitely, the Alpine Eagles car 100% missed a brake marker. Race leading car, Verfollegt, Simsport Mac back and behind the wheel. They come down towards pit road now pretty much right after the 3 hours to go mark. So look for them for scheduled pit service here. That's going to move potentially Mitchell de Jong up in the rear. Actually, no, I take that back. Mitchell's pretty far away back from his teammate. Nearly a 1 minute lead is what they had before they came down pit road. Actually, I think it may have even been longer than that. So sizable advantage here for the number 8.
Yeah, they lapped their way up to Apex Racing Team right before this pit stop. That's how dominating this car has been. The 18 machine, their counterparts, have had some mistakes. It's been picture perfect before this car. Outside of the contact before where the 90 led for some laps. This car has just absolutely took off again in the school attempts.
One has to wonder, Justin, we've been seeing a recent trend of class leaders coming into issues, and we have not seen that from the Daytona prototype category in a while. I'm not saying I want it to happen, but oh man, would this race be fun if that number 8 car got into some sort of trouble.
I think Verfollegt Simsport is going to say, please don't say that. They don't want the commentators curse. Let's just put it that way. By the way,
it's not the commentator's curse if I say they're going to crash. It's the commentator's curse if I say everything's going perfect and then they crash. If I say they're going to crash, then it's just a prediction, not a curse.
Well, we have seen the Redline curse before. No offense to Redline in terms of some of the struggles they had in some of the events in 2019, but at this point, as long as they keep the car on the track, they're okay. They got a big enough cushion where as long as they don't need a tow truck, they might be able to hold on.
We still got a couple of fights on the racetrack that are close as pit cycles continue here. The number 14, the MSI car, still very much fighting with that Williams Esports Benke machine of Agustin Canapino. Mark Perez is, of course, still behind the wheel, trying to reel in and bring that gap down as much as they can, but seems really stagnant, Justin. It seems like the moment one of these cars opens up about 2 or 3 tenths, the one behind then closes in or opens the gap back up, depending on who it is. So they're kind of just trading lap times, and they're both just isolated here at about this half a second marker.
Yeah, this battle has still stayed around the same, and I'm almost thinking again that, and this can happen a little bit with the draft here and there in some of the cars on the iRacing service where it's almost like you reach a buffer, like of a couple tenths, and it's hard to break that buffer because the speeds are nearly identical. Right now, Perez is in a situation where he needs to send it if he wants the position. Thing is, he's actually lifting earlier and is using Williams Esports BenQ to save the fuel that they potentially want to save before their final pit stops of this race, it appears.
Yeah, I mean, we're coming up here, Justin. It's going to be really interesting because most of these teams, you know, we've been talking about fuel strategy for the GT cars and how some of them, you know, they're pushing past the hour mark, but it's not really in such a way that it's going to be a big advantage. But, you know, you're going to have 2 more kind of full stops. You're going to pit here, you know, in a few laps with about 2 hours and some change to go. And then you're going to pit to, you know, with about an hour and some change to go, an hour 50, whatever the case might be, hour 40, hour 30. And then after that, you're going to have a short fill. And that's really what they're setting up right now. Everyone is setting up the ability for them, for themselves rather, to have as short of a final pit stop as possible. Unless, of course, they're trying to manage some sort of gap and maybe they underfill. As see these two side by side, Augustin having to go wide through Cunningham, but manages the traction well and has the spacing he needs as they run into Tower.
And he's been behind him now for a couple laps or so in this portion of their battle. So I'm wondering if Perez is starting to say, you know what, we've saved a little bit now. I think I'm faster. They're actually might be holding up a little bit. So he might try and send it a little bit. He is faster, it seems, in the run up to Le Mans, up to Bishop in Le Mans, for example, and some of the short straights. It's just he cannot seem to get fully side by side to make this position battle work because out of turn 16, for example, at Le Mans, it seems that car likes the bump.
Yeah, it's either that or it's got a little bit of a push and he just can't quite hook the corner up the way he needs. And it's so, I mentioned that a little bit ago, that's almost one of the corners you have to set your car up for. Yeah, the car has to handle the bumps. Yeah, you need to be quick through turn 1. Yeah, you need to have good low speed and good high speed grip. But man, that run through Le Mans is one of the most important corners on the racetrack in order to be able to make moves. Look at here, down this front straightaway, Mark Perez had the run, but not quite close enough as they were going into turn 1. A little bit wide though with Agustin Canapino, but actually he manages the time better than Mark did into turn 2, turn 3, and this gap is going to continue to stay stagnant. So we have a lot of close fights, we have a handful of close fights on the racetrack, Justin, that are kind of just equalizing out. We're not seeing these big gains by anyone anymore that we were seeing about 30, 40 minutes ago.
Yeah, and that's, I think, on top of everything, in part because, well, the track is cooling off, and that's where a lot of the pace actually equalizes, because the amount of fall off is not as quick when the track is cooler. Because in theory, again, you're able to have more grip, go quicker, yes, but at the same time, it balances out the overall fall off. Right now, for example, there's drivers setting some of the best times they've had all race since the start of the runs in the 152s, the prototypes, 156s for the GTEs and the GT3s. In comparison's sake, they're running the 157s for the most part. Just about a couple hours ago, they were the 159s and falling off nearly 5-6 tenths in a run. They're not having any.
Oh, we got problems. I was about to bring up this gap after you made this point, Justin, but Gianni Vecchio, second in GTE, has made a mistake down at the hairpin, and he is stationary, and that's going to move their team car, Team Redline Black and Max Benecke, up into second place. This was an unforced error by Gianni Vecchio, all on his own on the run into the hairpin. He just clipped the grass on the brakes, Justin, with the left rear tire. And at that sort of speed, that hard on the brakes, if you ever clip a rear tire into the grass or even a front tire into the grass, you're either going to push if it's a front tire or you're going to spin if it's a rear tire. That's exactly what happened to Gianni.
Yep, right in the hairpin, just a couple blades of grass. And again, unfortunate, this is the luck Redline has had in some of the events, even when they've came away with victories, is it's a matter of inches when it comes to racing. Very clear that matter of inches causes that spin. Watch the left front tire and how close it was between a good entry and a horrific entry right there.
Yep, and you see that rear tire is just what clips. That's right at the point you're turning into the corner too, Justin. And it's just, it may not seem like a big mistake. It may seem that like that's extreme, but it doesn't take a lot of grass when, especially at that point, when the car is that loaded up. You know, you can kind of run full throttle and dip a tire onto the grass and get away with it. But it's when the car is loaded up with everything on the front, when you're hard on the brakes, when you're getting ready to turn into the corner, slowing down, that's when, you know, race cars tend to be at their most likely to come around, and that's exactly what happened to Gianni Vecchio right there.
Yeah, and it's good on him, too, to quickly get the car off the track and find a quick opening. It could have been a lot more time lost, but it's still time lost. That's the problem. Now they are a ways behind for P number 2 at this point, and their own teammates in Redline Black. About 3.8 seconds, make it 3.9 seconds the gap.
Yeah, the point I was going to make though, Justin, is that they're not going to be able to reveal that in. So before, I literally had clicked over to Johnny just as he had that spin, because I'd seen that gap come down. Remember that gap was at about 11 seconds at one point between second and third, who was second and third. That gap had come down to about 5 seconds. So Max Benecke was quickly catching his teammate by the tune of about 1/4 to half a second per lap. So Max was doing everything he needed to bring that gap down. Now the discussion starts on what the gap's going to look like between P1 and P2, because that's what I was going to start really hyping on. Sebastian Job currently behind the wheel, the Red Bull Racing Esports BMW M8. The gap is 11 seconds, but Max has been pretty consistently able to eke out quicker lap times than Seb. Not by a large margin, usually it's a couple tenths here, couple tenths there, a few tenths here, a few tenths there, but it's enough that I think with 3 hours left, they may be able to make something of this.
Yeah, all that time does add up. And it's going to be crucial for them to close it up, absolutely. It's just a matter, again, though, will they be able to reel in Job? Because Job's running the exact same pace just about as when they start the race. When they set the fastest time for them at 1:55.3. Right now, last time by, in comparison's sake to when it was early, he ran a 1:55.6 past the start and finish line. So the pace is similar to when they began the race, but it's going to get quicker as the nighttime starts to settle in, because the in-sim time is now past 7 p.m. So this sun's going to set very quickly, and that pace is going to continue to gain, and that's where I think we're going to see if Benecke and crew built a car quick enough to be able to not just be a tenth or two quicker, but multiple tenths quicker in closing time.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. It's been really, really interesting to watch how this works out, especially with pit stops coming up. Now, granted, Justin, these teams have actually just recently made their final pit stops. So Sebastian Job was on pit road. He actually just got in that car on lap 272. That was about 5 or 6 laps ago. For Team Redline Black, their last pit stop was lap 270, which was about 8 laps ago. And you start doing the math, you kind of, you do 5 or 6 laps for Red Bull Racing Esports. That's going to be about 10 minutes. That puts you out to about 2 hours and 57, 2 hours 58 minutes. That's about the time that was left on the clock, maybe 3 hours. We'll say 3 hours. That was the time left when Red Bull Racing Esports came down pit road. Add a couple minutes onto that for Team Redline Black, and you're talking about 3 hours 2, 3 hours 3. I think both of them should be able to get to the end of the race on 2 more stops. But but Red Bull Racing Esports are in a much better situation than Redline Black are, being under the 3-hour mark as opposed to being over it when they had that stop.
I absolutely agree with you at that point. And I think in part, again, that's because Team Redline Black has had to essentially push for hours on hours to try and close up as much as they can, because they were the drivers who were up in front before they had some issues with technical problems. So in turn, that pushing, as I mentioned before a couple hours ago, you're off by 1 fuel cycle, it's not as big of a deal. You're off by 2 or 3 by a lap or so. That math in turn means you're out of the window you aim for.
It's been a while since we've done one of these, and it's time for us to take another one. We're going to go RaceSpot TV Fan Immersion. We've yet to do any GT3, so we're going to go on board with your GT3 class leader, Williams Esports Chill Blast, currently driven by Dominic Stave. He's having a good run. You see him now down the Ullman Straight and in towards that final corner. Enjoy a handful of laps on board, and you'll see what the drivers are dealing with through turn 17 as this track slowly starts going into darkness. We are now under 3 hours left to go here in the 2020 12 Hours of Sebring, presented by iRacing, and we are setting up for a grandstand finish. As Randy Cheneth and Justin Fritz on the coverage for you to the conclusion of this event, with Hugh Willoughby pushing the buttons in the production trailer. Let's do a top 8 rundown. It's been a while since we've done one of these. I'll quickly catch my breath, and let's look at your prototype division. It's Miras Sport leading the way over what is currently a pair of Apex Racing Team cars, but that should change with the pit stop cycle. We think at least those 2 Apex cars still owe us a pit stop soon. Then you get a pair of Miras cars, 4th and 5th at the moment. Then you get Mivano, Leo, and Simza rounding out your top 8. An interesting fight in GTE is slowly forming up. This should close in by about the end of the race. It is currently Red Bull Racing Esports leading the way in the number 2 car, but they are getting chased down by Max Benecke from Team Redline Black. Running in 3rd is the Porsche 24 driven by Redline car. They were leading not that long ago, but a couple of mistakes has means they drop back to P3. AAA Esports Daniel Lafuente is in 4th, with Vendaval Sim Racing Blue, William Esports BenQ, MSI Esports GTE, and Team Redline Green rounding out the top 8 in your GTE division. And now let's take a look at GT3. We just rode on board for a handful of laps with the Williams Esports Chill Blast car of Dominic Stave. Then you have the Vendaval Sim Racing Green car as Max Esteson in 2nd. Black Star Racing Kim Erickson in 3rd. Core Sim Racing GT3 in 4th. Orion Race Team HPP 5th with Simza, SQB, and Team Fordzilla, who are currently rounding out the top 8. And somewhat saddening to me here, Justin, is that Team Fordzilla, they're not actually in a Ford. Granted, the Ford in the GT3 division wasn't even available, but you can't have a name like Fordzilla and be running an Audi GT3 car. I mean, that's, to quote, I think it was Church from Red versus Blue, that's illegal.
What if I told you too, that is Ford's actual esports team?
Is it
They
really?
started last year. Yes, it is. That is the team they started in the summer 2019. That's based out of Europe.
So wait. So Team Ford, Ford started an esports team,
Yes.
and they're participating in the race that has a Ford vehicle available, and they're driving an Audi.
That's a question for the Ford offices, I think, at this point, but they've been able to have a quietly clean day, and they talked about this a couple months ago. I mentioned this a little bit earlier on in the first stint, where this team is knowing there's a lot of a learning curve, mind you. They're trying to get involved in multiple different aspects of sim racing. It takes time to build a team, and this team has done very well for one of the first times I think we've seen them on the iRacing Esports Network.
Yeah, they are actually doing very well, I must say. Running P8 right now, as a team of French drivers. Currently, it's Lauren Miskiewicz, which is a name I have 100% mispronounced. But he's also got Benjamin Gonzalez and Bruno Fontalba behind the wheel of that number 6 Team Fordzilla GT3 machine. So good to them to see them running top 10 and potentially even chasing down some cars in front of them as they go. The gap actually between them and S2B Esports is 4 seconds right now, and Fordzilla has been quicker. So what might be one of the longer names I've ever had to say on an iRacing broadcast, Victor Grano de Oro Preto in the S2B Esports number 12, currently getting chased down by the 8th place running Team Fordzilla.
Yeah, indeed here, and I think it's still going to take some time. They've had a decent pace around, pardon me here, in terms of average pace, around the 2-minute mark for the entire race, no matter what the track conditions, no matter the driver. So they've done an okay job, and this is something they can build upon to try and get themselves to where they want to be to compete with the Williams and the Miras Coandas of the world by this time next year.
Well, we'll see if they're able to do that. That is definitely a big undertaking, and so many of those teams have been around for as long as they have. Let's monitor some other fights, though. As we're taking a look right now at Core Sim Racing, this is 9th and 10th, 2/10 of a second in GTE. Currently separate these two. Ricardo Ferreira getting chased down by a man we've seen a lot the last couple hours. Carl Jansen in the Core Sim Racing number 13 car. Pokes out to driver's right, can't quite get it done. And they're going to be 3 wide actually with the Orion Audi side by side between these two for 9th, and Ricardo is I think going to think slightly better of it. Carl Jansen decides to poke it up the inside, and Ricardo sort of lifted to facilitate that pass. Let's see if he fights back though. He's going to look to the outside in towards turn 1. I said before, if you can maintain the overlap through 1, you can make the outside work, but he wasn't nearly close enough, Justin. You need to be almost, kind of nosing ahead as you go into turn 1 to be able to run the outside line, and he barely had any overlap at the rear fender. So let's see though, is there any mistake from Carl coming on to Big Ben?
And that's the key thing here, because if they don't get a good run off of here, that's going to end up slowing things up a little bit, because it is a sweeping right-hander where you carry a decent amount of speed. Looks like the slipstream does help a little bit in the out-braking, but still, I think it's going to at least take maybe a couple laps to get back into the position to try and make the pass. If not, try and send it up Sunset Bend. I don't think that's going to happen, though, even though it's getting later in the race.
And to be fair, Justin, they may not even be in a situation to be able to set that pass up.
Exactly.
Carl has been quicker. I mean, he was 4 tenths quicker when he made the pass, and a couple other laps as well. He was quicker by multiple tenths. Only recently was Ricardo actually quicker, and he was only by about 700 per second. So I think Carl actually has the pace advantage here, especially over the course of the stint. We have gotten confirmation, by the way, from Jack Ashton. We've seen him in the chat that as a member of Fordzilla, they wanted to start off with GT3. It's definitely understandable, Justin. The GT3 cars, I don't want to say they're easy to drive, but Paul kind of touched on this a little bit ago, before he left, talked about the fact that there's ABS on those cars, and they've been on the sim for a little bit longer, and I definitely say the GT3 cars are definitely easier to wrap your head around for as long as they've been on the sim. And some, like I said, the driver aid, the traction control seems a little bit more helpful, and as well as the ABS is a big one as well, just to prevent mistakes. It's definitely a decision that I understand.
It's also a decision, too, where you have to think about this, too. This is, again, one of the first times, if not the first time, we've seen them in a major special event, in a top split event, out of the best event. So, do you want to really put yourself into a car you might not have as much experience potentially in, or might not be as comfortable in a situation where you're trying to race the best of the best? You want to put yourself in the best situation to build momentum, as mentioned, going forward. They said it themselves. They wanted to get the taste of top split, as Jack Ashton put it, and then work their way towards the front.
I do want to go ahead and actually, the discussion of this is happening again, so I'm going to have to mention it one more time. I'm going to do a quick confirmation for myself before I make myself look like a fool if I end up being wrong, and indeed I confirm my thoughts. It's been a couple hours since we've had to mention it, but the chat's starting to light up about asking about it. Max Verstappen is not running in this race. Yes, the team he normally runs with is running in this race, Team Redline. They have 3 cars in this race, and actually I only checked 2 of them. I should check the other one. But Max Verstappen not connected to the server whatsoever, so don't expect to see your favorite Red Bull Formula 1 driver take part in this unless he connects at some point in the final 2 hours, which I find hard to believe. So no, Max Verstappen not in the race. Wish he was, because it's always great to see him run, Justin, because to be fair, every time we see Max in one of these races, there tends to be a good bit of drama.
Yeah, absolutely. Spa comes to mind, for example, when it was him and I believe it was Lando
Bathurst.
Yes, absolutely. Bathurst.
The Petit Le Mans.
Yeah, you can list them off better than I can, but it just seems to be like they have something happen whenever he's in the car. They already happened something when he wasn't in the car, mind you, and they're still trying to recover from that.
Yep, you're definitely right about that. Like you said, Team Redline in general still trying to recover up and down the running order. I do want to bring up that gap, by the way, here, Justin, that gap in the GTE lead. Remember a while ago I said it was about 8 seconds, I think, was about the ballpark? Max Benecke, the later half of this stint, is on rails. The last few laps that I can see for time differential, 285, 286, 287. 4 tenths quicker, 1.2 cents quicker, and 4 tenths quicker yet again. Currently working lap 88. Max has reeled in 2 seconds in the last 3 laps, and that gap is closing in down to 5 seconds. Seb Job and that Red Bull Racing Esports BMW are struggling on the tires at this phase of the stint. They're currently about midway through it.
Indeed, at this point, and when you have a driver like Maximilian Benecke behind the wheel, you know he's going to be able to push the pace like he has been right now, and I wasn't sure if he was going to close up that much time. I wasn't sure if he'd close that much time he was in the span of 1 hour. So there's the chance he can make this pass within the final 90 minutes of this race at the rate he's going. He just needs to keep up the pace and find a way to close the gap. I don't know if this is going to force a strategy call, though, from Red Bull or not.
It's going to be interesting to see, Justin, but you know, coming up to this next pit stop, like we were talking about earlier, I don't think this is when you're going to want to make that strategy call. I'm very much a fan, both as a race strategist and as someone who plays poker. You almost want to reveal your cards at the last possible moment. If you've got a bad poker face, or if you reveal what you're going to do too early, it gives your opponents time to respond.
Yeah.
If I'm Team Redline Black, I think I make my decision, and this is specifically in regards to tires. I make my decision on what I'm doing, and I make that call with 1 hour to go left in the race, when at the very, very last time I come down pit road is when I reveal whether I'm taking tires or not, and I'm doing a double stint. Yes, you can hypothetically do it now and try it now, and then say, oh, then you have a larger amount of time to really pressure Sebastian or whoever might be in that Red Bull Racing Esports car. We might see Frederick, or we might see, I believe, Holzman is connected to the server on that machine as well. But I definitely am a fan of waiting until the very last moment and keeping your opponents thinking. Definitely is the best way to go about it, especially as well if you're thinking making a tire call, Justin. The track temp's still relatively warm, even with the sun, nearing going down. 73-degree track temp, it's only coming down about 4 degrees in the last couple hours, and I don't think we're quite cool enough for when you'd want to be trying to double.
Thought about this too here in terms of that point. In terms of when they pit, Redline Black stretched it long last time by a lap. So if Red Bull tried to pull something to gain time, there's an easy chance they can do exactly what you were mentioning a little bit there. Follow that exact same strategy, and the gap is mute, or the time gained is mute essentially. So there's a lot of ways you can do this. You just have to play it smart. Here's the thing though, Redline, they're drafting off. I believe that's Redline Green at the moment. Redline Black is in the mix of multiple cars.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of traffic around them, but most of it is either in-class or faster traffic, which tends to be a little bit easier to deal with, Justin. Although that said, there are a couple of sort of in-class cars that are slower than them in front of them. So there's a GTE BMW that they're about to be stuck with in some prototypes as well. So the problem now for Redline is that, Seb has already gotten through all this traffic, and now you're going to have to be dealing with the fact that Max is dealing with it now. And you end up in this situation where Max is quicker than a prototype through turn 1 because of traffic on the exit. They were 3 wide as they came through there for a moment behind. So things so dicey, but I think for the most part, the bulk of the traffic gets through here for Max Benecke. I don't see any more prototypes behind, and I don't see any more GT cars really close out in front of him.
The driver got the worst of that, by the way. You might have seen on the right side here of the track there was Andrew Carroll, who got loose and went off the grass.
We nearly had a disaster. I'm sorry, exactly. We nearly had a... No. This happened in front. Daytona Prototype nearly tagged the back of a race-leading Red Bull Racing Esports machine. Ended up being tight, but this is just, I think, with the traffic, Justin, this was actually Alpine Eagle Racing once again. We've seen them had a couple of problems, and they locked it up on the run into the hairpin, and luckily Marcus Gurek able to just save that. There was a little bit of space between there, Justin, but man, that would have been what, potentially the second race leader they've tagged?
Yeah, possibly, and you can see right there just losing traction, and it just seems like they slide along the marbles, takes them off the grass. If they slid along the marbles any earlier, there's a chance that would have carried the momentum right into the rear end, and they still got to pass Red Bull still.
Yeah, and Seb's going to be looking in the rear view, and he's not going to be enjoying seeing that car in his rear view, I think, once again, after what just happened. So this is not going to be a great situation whatsoever. So Marcus is going to be able to get by the car, and the next car will be the Red Bull Racing Esports BMW. And just look at the sky, Justin. We are into darkness. You don't even need to look at the sky. Just look at the racetrack. The racetrack has gone from being illuminated by the sun to really the primary source of light is not only the lights on the racetrack, but the lights on these race cars. We're not in full darkness yet. We're, I'd say, about 30 minutes away from that, maybe even closer to an hour. But it is dark. Is Seb really struggling with that prototype right now?
And right now, compare that to Redline where it's open space. You can see the prototype just gone by. The problem is, Alpine Eagle Racing in Sector 1 and 2 is nearly the same pace. The straight line speed's the main difference. And they still got a couple more to deal with. Apex and Team RSO are coming up and quick.
Yeah, they are. So things are really about to get dicey, and it's almost like an inverse, Justin, of what Team Redline Black just had to deal with. We had the situation with Redline Black and that big gaggle of cars, and even though there was some GT traffic mixed in, I'd say Max Benecke handled that entire situation actually really well. But the couple prototypes that were in that mix, they are now reaching the back of your race leading car, Sebastian Job. The gap still sits at about 5 seconds, but it's definitely coming up to step, and this is definitely going to be a problem for him to deal with. First one is going to be Johan Hart, Apex Racing Team number 90. He currently sits fourth. You know, he's pushing. Then, like you said, Team RSO, they're a little bit down the order. They're still pushing, trying to make up spots as well.
Yeah, as one of their drivers said, they're on fire, essentially, in terms of the pace they're trying to keep up with, because Alpine Eagle Racing is a position for Team RSO. So they want to gain that track position back after being multiple laps down after that incident around the halfway point. So they're not going to be quite as patient as some of the other competitors here, because there's the chance they can leapfrog. Oh, that was close.
That was brave there, and you look at that GT3 car going way wide up to really what is the third lane there at turn 17. It's almost like running the cushion on a dirt track being out there, the way you can spool it up, but they did it to get out of the way, and RSO is going to be able to cycle on by here. Let's see what this does to the lap times. It's going to be a 1:55.9 for Sebastian Job. Max Benecke is going to cycle through the start-finish, and he has gone to a 1:55.6, so 3/10 that lap was reeled in. The gap now currently sitting back at 5 seconds. It was down to about 4 seconds at its closest, but all the traffic we had meant that Max lost a little bit of time with that big gaggle of cars.
This is all while going on. Drivers are fighting hard for other positions. This is, for example, P5 in that same class. They are nearly 3/4 of the track behind, and they're shuffling around. So everybody, again, is fighting and overlapping in terms of positioning of the track. It's similar to what it was a couple hours ago. It's happening again.
You're right, and especially oh, and Simtech, Daniel Lafuente almost looked sideways on the exit out of Cunningham. The car had a weird attitude to it as he was running through Cunningham on the run into the tower, but now you see Matty Kaitasoja, preventative all Sim Racing Blue, right underneath the rear wing of Daniel Lafuente. They'll run now in towards Bishop. You see all the race cars behind these two as well. It's a mix of GT3 and DP behind. It's actually only one Daytona prototype, so it's only one of the cars they're really going to have to deal with. But here they come, Daniel Lafuente and Matty Kaitasoja off of Le Mans, and look at the run for Daniel compared to Matty. Matty got a terrible exit coming off of Le Mans, and he's able to open up 3 car lengths. Draft doesn't even matter at this point here, Justin. Daniel's given himself a little bit of breathing room, at least for the final corner.
It's also not going to help that you have the prototype saying hello, stage right on cue. So that's, of course, compromised the entry as well. So this is, again, looking like the difference in pace separating these drivers out a little bit more. A 1:58.8 for the car on board, 1:58.6 for our AAA Esports up in front.
The gaps continue to ebb and flow and close here. We have recently had a cycle of pit stops, by the way. I think we've had both of our Apex Racing Team cars come down pit road here relatively recently. Maybe, oh no, I take that back. At least the 91, I believe, has been down on towards pit road. Maybe both of them, but they've pit relatively recently. Coanda cars, I believe, still owe us a stop. When does Mac have to pit next? Yeah, Mac's not been on pit road for a while. What about the number 18 car? Let's double check my timing. And yeah, Jeremy owes us pit stop too. So Apex cars not getting great fuel economy, Justin. And you know, we talked a little bit about it earlier. You know, the way the DP goes, the fact you're only doing something like 45, 50 minutes. I know it's not quite an hour. I don't know what the exact runtime is off the top of my head. Coanda might not only be outpacing them, but with them getting the better fuel economy, Coanda might actually be setting up to cut out a pit stop here as we approach 2 hours to go.
That was a strategy I wasn't sure if we should discuss yet or not, because it has worked before in previous races where drivers have legit taken in 24-hour races one less pit stop. That in a 12-hour race is potentially doable as well. It'd be very tight, and that's where the amount of time you potentially lose comes in. But they haven't had to worry about time, especially the 8 car in this race. And in turn, it's actually worked out perfectly for them. Yes, they're 18 and 81, have made mistakes, but their DPs have been in a great fuel situation. Seems all race with that 7-lap advantage every single stop compared to Apex to get themselves towards the end of this race.
Yeah, and you almost have to wonder, Justin, at what point if you're Apex, when do you start responding to that strategy differential? Because 7 laps is enormous. It's, you know, it almost seems like there needs to come a point where you change that up, where you say, okay, we can't be allowing that to happen. We need to start going, you know, longer and pretty much matching on the stints. Because really the only way, you know, that makes any sense is if you're like hilariously faster than Quanda, and if you're pitting more and you're not going faster, you're just losing time.
I would have tried that, to be quite frank, a couple hours ago. It's kind of too late to do anything now. That's the thing. You're not going to save that much amount of time if you were to be able to close up that amount of gap without losing gobs of time at this point of the race. If you did it even 6 hours ago, I think it's realistic. Not so much now.
Had a couple people ask about live timing, and live timing is available at racebot.tv/timing. So tune in there and you can get everything you want. You monitor when cars are on and off of pit road, lap times, lap gaps, live gaps. Pretty much follow the race without watching the race, to be honest. But that's where you can go to find live timing if you're so inclined. The gaps continue to ebb and flow here. Still monitoring that fight for the race lead in GTE. It's now down to 4 seconds, and Max Benecke still, Justin, running at about 0.3 of a second quicker every single lap.
This is going to get very curious here, and there are tons and tons of cars that are having to shuffle around too. This is not what Red Bull Racing wants to have happen around them at this point, I don't think. But eventually, though, Team Redline's going to have to still go through the same traffic. The thing is, though, it seems Team Redline's been able to get through some of the traffic a little bit easier at this point of the race compared to Sebastian Job. At least on the bright side, Job gets to breathe, while others look to die.
Justin, I'm going to ask you a bit of a hypothetical here as we approach this next round of pit stops for GTE. We should be seeing cars in soon. Sebastian Job is currently running his 22nd lap, indeed it is. And Max right now, he's been in, I'm not sure how many, it's been 24 laps. So cars are going to be down on towards pit road soon. If you're Team Redline, do you take one of your cars that's a little bit off the pace, be it either Team Redline Green, who is, where is the Redline Green car actually? They currently sit about mid-pack, they're running top 10, or do you take that Porsche 24 car? You're coming up to what's going to be the penultimate pit stop here in about the next 5 or 10 minutes. Do you take one of those cars and double stint them to see what's going to happen? Because they have the privilege of having teammates. Red Bull Racing Esports don't have any sister cars. There's a, you know, they're a single machine show at the moment. Redline has 3, and they're all Porsches. Do you maybe test the double stint with one of them coming up to this pit stop to see how it goes?
I can honestly see it maybe happening. I don't know if there would be that level of thought process, but I wouldn't be surprised if 1 or 2 of those teams at least think about it to be able to try and see, can we gain enough time? Because I know you don't like these track conditions with the double stint, but honestly, we've seen double stints at 80 degrees before at some tracks. There's still the risk of the higher tire degradation. So it's something I think they might try, 1 car at least out of them. I wouldn't be surprised to see other teams try the same. That's something that I think is going to potentially happen. The number of them, I don't know. I think we might see it maybe more realistically, as you talked about a little bit, now that we've gone to this situation where driver swaps happen at 3 hours instead of 4 hours in some of these teams, to wait until the 1 hour to go mark for the last pit stop. And then Porsche
24 had something happen, or they made a scheduled pit stop? They have, hold on.
Yeah.
Well, which one? Because they've lost a ton of time, and I'm seeing lap 293 not even count for them. And I'm seeing a driver. Did they pit?
Well, they had a driver swap. Yes, we've seen them pull out of pit lane. So they actually took tires for their stretch. From Larry to 10-4, for example. So they've already had a pit stop. They're still going to have to take at least 1, though. It's going to be interesting how fuel numbers are going to add up to get checkered from that final stop, though.
Them coming down pit road and doing full service, though, Justin. There's one of their potential strategy calls strategy tester is gone, so that's just going to leave Team Redline Green as the last one that can potentially do it. And actually, they've actually just done their driver swap. Let's see what they did. And that was full service. So, and now if you're Team Redline, if you're going to double stint tires, it's going to be just you doing it with the black car, and it's going to be going untested. So maybe not a great situation for Max Benecke and Redline Black to be in. You see him dealing with some white traffic. But as you take a look as well, I believe that's one of the Williams cars coming off pit road. And if that is, this car that's, actually take that back. The Williams car is on the pit road in the background. Who's that?
That is Williams Esports BenQ, Randy. That just came out into middle traffic.
Something weird going on. I'm not sure, but it's working my mind. But regardless, what's your kind of take on this, Justin? Who do you think he's got the advantage between these top two?
In terms of the class and the battle that we've been discussing, Red Bull and Team Redline, the pace advantage, it seems like it's Team Redline the advantage. The thing's going to be, though, I'm not really sure how it's going to shape out. I think, again, like I mentioned, it's going to come up to strategy because now the traffic is evening out the pace a little bit because of now Team Redline having to deal with the same amount of gobs of cars that the Red Bull machine had to deal with, while Red Bull Racing Esports, they've got clean air for at least a lap or two until that prototype says hello.
Yeah, you're right, and that is going to be something they have to deal with. And Max is dealing with lap traffic as well. Let's monitor some other closer fights as this one continues to come down. I'm seeing 0.3 of a second between Mall Racing Team and Core Sim Racing GTE. It's a little bit further down in the running order. I see Andre Bocher behind the wheel and Samuel Lebert behind the core car. So Mall Racing Team, Mall Racing Team, I'm going to mix up how that's pronounced. But here comes that Core Porsche looking to the outside of Big Ben, but hard to get that job done, especially when you got an Audi pulling out there. They're thinking of making it 3 wide on the run into the hairpin.
Yeah, that's a new Williams Esports entry for this round with a new sponsorship that's looking to still impress. And they were looking okay at the start of the race, not so much in the middle sector. They've gone okay in this final sector, though, to try and have the best finish. I don't think they're going to make it easy, though, to give up a top 10 here.
Yeah, I think you're right. These guys are really going to push hard here to get everything they can out of this event. Out of Cunningham, that BMW able to open up just enough of a gap over Samuel Lebert to be comfortable. And actually, Samuel really struggling with the traffic, letting some faster traffic through as Max Benecke is cycling through. A little bit of headlight flashing from the back from, I think that might be nope, that's a Porsche actually. That is the AAA Esports car. But a little bit of headlight flashing, and that should be pretty much the bulk of the traffic, dude. Just got Max Benecke to come through next.
Well, the reason for the blinking lights, that was AAA Esports White's machine. They're also in the mix for this position. They were stuck behind that S2V Esports machine that was just in the backdrop, and they were not being let go easily. They might have lost the slipstream, potentially for that position battle as a result, while Bootaloo comes out of the pits.
Yep, Bootaloo onto and off the pit road, and let's see where those Apex cars in comparison. They're already clear by. One's working through turns 3, 4, and 5. The other one's working up towards the hairpin. And Josh Rogers, meanwhile, in his own SIP code, 44 seconds ahead of Apex Racing Team and Kevin Ellis Jr. But yeah, or excuse me, Max Backham, not Max Backham. 45 seconds up the road. I'm starting to get tired, Justin. Can you tell?
There's a lot of Maximilians on the surface, have to admit, though.
Yeah, Max. You have Max. You have Max Benecke. You have Max Verstappen. You have, I'm sure there's another Max that I'm forgetting. You have Max BTV. So many Max. You have Maximum Inspection and Monster Jam. Yes, a lot of Max. Let's go back to this race. 5 seconds. Gap is opened up between Seb John and Max Benecke. As well, we're going to talk about Max again. But something's happened to Max, I think, with the traffic. So Seb still doing everything he can to manage this gap.
This is all well. Max Backham in the middle of the Max and Mac conversation is still gaining time, is trying to make sure he keeps the gap, I should rather say. It's big. He isn't losing too much time compared to Apex Racing Team. You can see only maybe a tenth or so when he is in traffic. So Backham's in a great position, trading on the checkered flag, and he's being given lots of space outside of whoever's trying to talk over his left shoulder, maybe.
Yeah, perhaps. Maybe a little bit of talking going on. Ricardo asking in caps if Max Verstappen is he racing with smiley faces. Don't troll me. I troll easy. I trigger easy. Whichever. However, 3-car scrap now between Mall Racing Team, Core Sim Racing, GTE, and now AAA Esports White. They're only about a second or so back. Eyeing up the inside was the Core Sim Racing driver, Samuel LeBert, in towards this final sequence of corners. Not quite able to get through in towards turn 17, but the GT3 traffic is going to check him up. A little bit of a tap from the 13 onto that Mall BMW, and this is going to be a stack up into turn 1. Look at this Audi, really checking everything up, and 3 wide is what they're going to commit to, and trying to get to the inside is Samuel LeBert. Not able to make it stick, but can he have the momentum? I think he might send it up the inside here into turn 3. That's a little too far back, and you got to be careful. All over the curve on the left, and he's able to maintain the speed. Now through the middle of the corner, the 13, can he get the run on the big bend? And AAA Esports White is now in this as well. Headlights flashing, trying to force a mistake.
Now this is going to be an absolute send heading to the hairpin.
Down into the hairpin, there's going to be a defensive move from Andre Bocher, and that's going to hold up the assault from Samuel Liebert just that little bit. They run now through the run towards Cunningham. Who's going to eye up the move? Who's going to think about making the move? Up the inside is where Samuel wants to go, and Andre is going to fight it from the long way round. You can defend from the outside there as the track immediately cuts to the left, but look at what Samuel has managed to do. He's got it hooked up, and he has the preferred line into Tower Corner. Move Andre Bocher into P11 and move Samuel LeBert into your top 10. Next in line, Ricardo Ferreira for AAA Esports White. He's got the right-hand lane on that number 5 BMW in towards Bishop. Hard now on the brakes at the exit of Bishop, and now that's 2 positions lost for Andre, but Ricardo's overshot, and he's over the curb.
He outbraked himself trying to set it hard. That's not a place where you expect a side-by-side battle. And now he's got to work himself up towards Maui Racing Team again. So this has not been a good past couple of laps with that 211.
Yeah, that's really not great if you're Ricardo, and it's an easy mistake to kind of force yourself into, isn't it, Justin? You get up close, you want to make the move, and especially into that corner. It is a bit of a braking zone, but it's not a super hard braking zone. It's not a super long braking zone, but it's evil. It's evil. It's easy to overestimate how much room you're going to have to be able to potentially make a move, and that's exactly what we saw. Just thinking he had more space and more speed that he could carry through there, and that ends up being a mistake that costs him potentially gaining position and drops him back a handful of car lengths.
Yeah, but I think based on how much he's been able to close back up, I think he might be a little bit faster at this point of the run. But an interesting pit call. Team Redline back came down to the pit lane and took a 11.6 second stop. So something's going to be interesting for Benecki now on the fuel call.
I am really confused, Justin. This makes no sense to me. 11.3 seconds. That's going to be, what, a third of a tank of gas? So one of two things has happened. Either they've miscalculated their fuel for the entire race. So to be honest, if you're a third of a tank of gas, you're talking 10 laps. You can extend, it's a 12-hour race. You can save 10 laps of fuel in a 12-hour race. You can do that and not lose a ton of time. It's not really that hard to do, actually. So I'm not sure about this. I don't know if they've had a miscommunication. I don't know if they came down a lap too early. But this is really weird. It's either that or everyone still has to make a splash and dash, and for some reason Max is just getting his done earlier. But like we talked about earlier, Justin, if everyone has to do a splash and dash right now, I don't like doing it now. I like doing it in 2 hours time, in an hour and a half, and doing your splash and dash then, because then you have potential to save fuel before then. Maybe you can get to an underfill situation there. Maybe you can even make Red Bull think that you're in a good fuel situation. Why would you ever take the splash and dash now?
Remember the technical issue. That's the only thing I can think of, and this is a long shot of a strategy. What if they decided, because they had to come down off cycle before, that they could have taken a short stop and elected to take that short stop. Now everybody else still has to pit for about 2 more times here at this point of the race. This might either be the smartest call or the strangest call. This is again a long shot, Randy. This is a long shot.
But he still has to pit in the next, 10 laps? It was only 11.3 second stop, and 30 seconds is full fuel. So why, if you have to pit right there, why not just take the full service? Because now the problem they have themselves in, Justin, is they have to hit their fuel number perfect. Now they have no flexibility in terms of being able to underfill the car, because if they underfill the car, then they have to stop again, which means now the drivers are to a certain extent driving to a fuel number, whereas if you save the short stop for last, you can kind of use whatever fuel you wanted, and then you have flexibility into how much fuel you have to take at that final stop. You can potentially save and make it so you have to take less, or if you want to push, you can do that, but you'll have to take a little bit more. Just doing it this way restricts you so much, and like I kind of talked about earlier, it just exposes your hand.
Again, it's a strange call, and I'm curious to see how this all works out. That's the thing. Another thing Lorenzo Bonder mentioned in the first of the broadcast when they had the technical issues with Hutu, when Beneke had to take over in the race car at one point, was the early pit stop was not early enough to avoid the splash and dash situation. Again, that's the gamble.
But the problem is, though, is that they're in the same exact situation as Red Bull.
Yeah, I know.
Like, yes, I know. You know, to Lorenzo's point, yes, they had the technical issue, and yes, they had to come down pit road. But when you look at Red Bull Racing Esports, their last in lap was lap number 271. You look at Team Redline Black, not counting the short stop, obviously, their last time onto pit road was lap 270. There's only a 1 lap difference between the two. So it makes no sense to make your short stop now under any circumstance.
I mean, I'm not saying I disagree. That's the thing. Again, this is something they might be trying something outside the box.
I'm actually curious as well, because actually Lorenzo is bringing up a good point in the chat. How deep into his stint was he? So his last full service was 272, and he just hit the pit lane on 299. So it was a 27 lap stint. It was basically a full stint. These guys are doing basically, what, 30 laps? So the pit stop before that, in lap of 241, and then that went to 271. No, 270. So basically 30 laps. So he was 3 laps short of a full stint when he did that.
Yeah. This is going to take a lot of math here, potentially. I'm curious to see if it's possible to see if we can get some type of discussion point and try to explain the strategy call then, potentially.
Yeah, this is so weird. I mean, it definitely isn't a standard short stop. It's way too short to be a standardized kind of short fill. Because for those, we talked about this earlier, obviously some more people maybe tuning in because we're coming up toward the end of the race. You would, typically a full fuel service is about 30 seconds. And if you're going to short fill, you're going to take about 24, 25, 26 seconds. Max took 11.3. And that's what we're so perplexed by. And the other thing as well, Justin, is that, I mean, does this open up maybe another short? Do you maybe consider this like half of a double stint and then able to double stint again on top of this?
I mean, maybe, and this is going to be curious now with Red Bull Racing just coming into pit lane here. Again, this is all tied up in the pretzel, to say the very least, in terms of the call. He's obviously, depending on what Red Bull here does, and likely is going to cycle up to the lead here, but this is going to get very, very interesting.
Yeah, I am super confused of what's going on. Red Bull Racing Esports, by the way, have come down pit road, and they seem to be taking full service. They actually, no, not full service, fuel only for Red Bull Racing Esports. Things are getting dicey in GTE because this is the first time in a while, Justin, we've seen GTE cars go for it on the double. The track temperature has not gone down very much since the sun has gone down. You can see we're now in complete darkness. We are still at 72 degrees Fahrenheit on the track temp. That has not changed, but Red Bull Racing Esports, they, for whatever reason, Justin, they call it early, and they want to do the double stint. And again, why wouldn't you save it for the last hour?
Well, I think our director, Hugo Ruiz, remember, he, back in the early part of the 2010s, was an experienced World Championship racer. And this is a good thing to bring up, quote unquote. Sometimes you need to do crazy stuff to try and win the race. If you remember back in that time, that was how he won first time in the World Championships. And it was at this track too. So sometimes you need to go and do the crazy.
I don't know if he needed to be this crazy. Now, granted, that was in the old Williams F1 car. where I know Hugo would go full races without changing the tires because he's a bad one. Now and then his career got to the point where his first race in the McLaren, he didn't realize that you couldn't refuel it because he's a genius. But besides that point, 2 hours to go. Sebastian Job comes down pit road. I'm going to go from questioning Team Redline to now go questioning the Red Bull Racing Esports, Justin. If you're Red Bull Racing Esports, why would you do the double stint now? Like, maybe you want Sebastian in the car for longer, sure. But if you're going to if you want to do a double stint, just say, you know what? Sorry, Frederick. Sorry, Patrick. We're going to leave Seb in to the end of the race. He's going this extra hour, I think, no matter what. You know, because he's taking a full tank of fuel. He's going to be going for the next hour. So instead of, you know, maybe saying, oh, we want to do a driver swap then, just leave Seb in the car and then do a double stint then, as opposed to doing it now.
I mean, this was something I thought was a potential possibility a couple hours ago, I have to admit, before we seen the driver swap. That's why I thought originally they were going to wait an extra hour. But I wonder if this is also to, you keep an eye on what's going on around the racetrack. I'm wondering if they thought in this process, we may as well take the double stint now because there was that massively low call from Redline Black. Now it's going to become very interesting. I think this is where the crazier part of the discussion is going to come in, Randy, is if they elect a triple stint, which again, I don't think you do realistically, but do you take a risk?
Yeah, this is so I'm really confused about this whole thing, because the other thing I say is like you just kind of said, Justin, this is a pretty big risk from Red Bull Racing Esports perspective. Because if this doesn't work, and I know from in the past from testing some of the GT cars on the sim, sometimes you can get to the end of a stint and the car feels pretty good on the tires, and you say, okay, I can double stint this. But you got to remember, the car is light on fuel. Now these guys are of course experienced enough to know this, and I'm sure they've tested. But we're going to be watching their lap times very closely here. It is a very different thing to be on old tires with a freshly topped up race car. It is a big ask to do that. And I remember one circumstance in the Audi GT3. It was for this very race. We were, for us at Team Chimera, we were testing double spinning in the Audi, and over the first stint, you know, the first kind of fuel run on the tires as the car got light, lap time stayed pretty consistent. We were like, you know, maybe this can work. We came down pit road. We tried. This is just a testing, not a race. We put fuel in the car and we went back out there, and the lap time dropped off 3 seconds per lap. I don't think it's going to be anywhere nearly that strong for these guys because the GTE cars tend to look after their tires a little bit more, but this is a big ask for them. First indicator is going to be this first hot lap. Seb was in the 55.5s, and his first time by the 56.6. That is a 0.7 of a second slower than his previous hot lap.
The GT3 leader all of a sudden, and apparently
no.
this is just going on where they have had to duck down to the pit lane, and they've got no void.
Huge damage for the number 309 Williams Esports Chill Blast. This is going to be a race ender. How long have they been on pit road? It's only been about 30 seconds, and where did this incident take place? It actually happened well before they made the tow. It may have been on pit exit or turning into turn one. Big problem for Williams Esports, and it looks like it was the Core Sim Racing Porsche. We'll see as they go down the front straightaway, you're going to see a slight misjudgment, and bang, and that right there is how you dump a GT3 leader going into turn one, and that is their race over.
You gotta be kidding me is what you were saying if you were in that cockpit, because they were in full control of this field. Unbelievable. Core Sim Racing had shown they were willing to be aggressive before in turn one before. Not the type of car you try and be aggressive in. I think they just misjudged the line. They wanted the bottom. They just slightly tapped them hard into the fence.
We have more strategy coming up as well as I'm clicking through some of the stuff that's been happening. Justin, Hayden Burns, who currently sits second in GT3. They're on a double stint. They're just only gone 34 seconds. They now lead the race, of course, with that incident. There's all sorts of things happening, and we had another look at that incident right there. So all sorts of things are heating up here on the racetrack, and there's all sorts of confusion. Justin, why don't you pick a car? We're closing in on the end of the hour here. Let's take a fan immersion. You and I can try to wrap our head around everything that's happening, because there's a lot of confusion with everything that's happening. GT3 leader getting taken out. Pair of GTE cars that are currently leading the race that are doing really interesting strategy calls. I want a few minutes to be able to wrap my head around everything. So pick a car and we'll go with it. So just first one you think of, go.
Okay, I'm going to pick this blindly, and I think I'm pointing at Venable Sim Racing Blue in the 42. We haven't talked much about them. Now they're in line for a podium, the 42.
Another car that's currently on a double stint, so strategy call is getting interesting here with 2 hours left to go. We'll be back after this fan immersion. We'll monitor some lap times. We'll get ourselves a quick break to bring you the final couple hours of this broadcast. Don't go away. counting down the ticker, but we have huge strategy implications that we have to consider and start talking about. So let's start with the people who really kicked this off. Team Red Line Black. A handful of laps ago, it was lap number, I can't remember when they came down for their short fill, if I'm honest. It was lap number 299. They came down pit road, they took 11 seconds of fuel, and they went back out, and they started pushing. We were a little bit confused because it makes the most sense typically if you have a splash and dash to save it to the end for a handful of reasons, which we'll be talking about, which we've already talked about, but we'll probably continue to expand on. It ran about 10, 11 laps, 9 laps or so, and Max Benecke has just come down pit road once again, and it has been a full fuel and tire stop for Max Benecke on Team Red Line Black. In between those two pit stops, between the two of them, Red Bull Racing Esports has come down pit road as well, and they decided to take tires only. And this is where things get interesting, Justin, and this is why I'm saying you want to save your strategy calls for the very, very end of the race. Sebastian Job is out there after taking the 30-second bonus of not taking tires. The problem he has is he is currently off of his pace by 1 second a lap. Let's go down here the last 5 laps before he came down pit road. 55.9, 55.7, 55.6, 55.7, 55.6. Really consistent within about 2 to 3 tenths. Since he's been off pit road, 56.6, 56.7, 56.6, 56.4, 56.6, 56.9. He is a second to a second and a half slower per lap. And over the stint, as the tires get worse, he eventually comes down pit road in about 45 minutes time. Things are crazy at the moment with everyone making these crazy strategy calls.
Well, the music fits right into the strategy calls, right? The way it's understood, and I've been trying to comprehend everything and try and get information on this as well. The way I understand it is for Team Red Line Black, the thought process was they had to splash and dash for fuel potentially to get to the end anyway. They took that splash. That was the first pit stop. During the fan immersion, they took that expected second stop. They can make it a 1 more stop. If they can get a 34-second cushion somehow on Red Bull Racing, or about 34 seconds ahead by the time the pit stop windows are done the last time around, there's the chance that Red Line Black has played their cards crazily well. Any less, Red Bull would be in the lead for that pit stop. The gap was around 26 seconds between Benecke and Red Bull.
Yeah, so in essence, when Red Line came down pit road for their full service, they had technically, because of the way Red Bull did their tire strategy, you could argue that they had lost 8 seconds, but I don't entirely buy into that thought process at the moment, the way things are going. Let's talk about the gaps as they sit. The gap right now is currently 54.6 seconds out there on the racetrack. Sebastian Job leading over Max Benecke, but that gap is slowly coming down. Let's take a look at the lap gaps. Bring up the graphic on my own end. Hugo actually I take that back. We've not seen enough laps from Max yet to be able to see the lap comparison, so sorry about that. We need to give it about 5 or 6 minutes, let Max really cycle some hot laps through, and then we can go down the lap time differential to see where Red Bull is really gaining or losing on this tire strategy. But Red Bull continuing to do everything they can to get their way through traffic. Let's see if we can find any fights to really monitor while we wait for about 10 minutes to tick off the clock. I saw Course Sim Racing disappear from my timing screen for a moment, but they're back. They're actually fighting with the Radicals car of who's that behind the wheel. That is Sebastian Schmallenbach. So the car that we just saw, I believe, caught up in that issue with your leading GT3 car, who, by the way, I missed in that little rundown. We'd also just seen your GT3 leader get taken out and ending their own race. So that's currently Vendeball Sim Racing Green, who leads a P11 and P12 right now on GTE up for grabs.
Yeah, this has just been... It went from the calmest 12 hours of Sebring in recent memory to the crazier ones in recent memory, because it's been like this craziness since 6 hours to go. It calmed down for a cool period for a couple hours. It's picked back up again because there's a lot of risk when it comes to nighttime racing, because you have to be picture perfect on your marks, because you don't have as strong as visual cues because of the darkness. You need to memorize your racing lines to be able to hit the corners properly. If you don't, we've seen some of the results already under this darkness.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the things, 100%, Justin. One of the things that you would do is, maybe for the super experienced teams, maybe not so much, because the more experience you get in theory, obviously the less likely you should be to make those sorts of mistakes. But I definitely say if you were more of a mid-tier team, even though it's only a couple hours, you might feel like, oh, it's only a quarter of the race that's in darkness. We'll be fine by then. You don't want to throw 9 hours of effort away because you haven't practiced in the darkness. You have the opportunity on the sim to go do some testing under the lights. I would 100% advise to any sort of any team, if you're coming to one of these races, do some testing under the lights, because you not only are going to get a good track time in terms of learning the circuit at night, you might find something in terms of strategy, and we've been seeing that in GTE, especially in terms of the tire strategy working its way through.
Absolutely, and there's some smoke here. Hold on, what's going on? That's Team Fordzilla that just went right around them.
The Team Fordzilla in the 66, some sort of an issue, looking like at the exit of turn 17. They're around the SRC Squad Corsa Black car, but they did it all by themselves coming through that final corner. Pushed a little bit wide out there, Justin. They just sort of got up into the middle groove, and not that great a grip out there. Caught one of the bumps, and you see him just a bit of a half spin in that out.
Could have been much more worse. That brought a whole ton of smoke. But still, on the bright side, they're in P5. Downside, gonna make it hard to execute potential strategies when you bust your rear tires like that.
Yeah, it really, really is. To do something like that. Sorry, you caught me in the middle of getting a swig of water. So I had to kind of panic, get that down, and then respond to your statement. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just so mind melted at the moment with everything that's been going on. We don't have a lot of other close fights, semi-thankfully, Justin, so we can really kind of monitor this gap in GTE and what's happening there. We are watching 6th and 7th though in GT3, Simza and STV. See them separated by a second and a half as they are now exiting the hairpin and on the run down towards the Cunningham. But a little bit of lockup there from that outing. They need to turn up the ABS settings a little bit, but second and a half gap, that is looks like it's been coming down in favor of the 12th.
Yeah, a little bit at this point. It's still a second and a half or so, but again, these are the drivers that we haven't had the chance to talk too much about, but they've had some very calm but quiet races for the most part in this class. Just about all the cars, a lot of the trouble in the early stages, mind you, with some of the big players like NX Racing, Pure Racing Team, Benevol's White Car, Movado Sim Racing. They ended off about 5, 6, 8 hours ago. It's been a different type of race since then, with a lot of teams we don't usually quite see, or drivers or teams who are trying to gain experience and get themselves up in the upper tiers, having some decently quiet runs today. And that's been the case. These drivers have already pulled away a decent margin from MSI Esports and Pure Racing Team, for example.
Yeah, they're doing very, very well for themselves. And, like you said, some big teams down there in GT3, and some not so big teams are punching well above their weight. Team Fordzilla definitely comes to mind there. We've just seen them make a mistake, but they currently sit 5th. Ryan Race Team as well. I mean, Orion is a team that is almost as old as Hugo is in terms of sim racing. That team has been around forever. I don't remember seeing them too often in recent years, if I'm honest. I haven't seen them, or I'm probably just a bit of a derp. But seeing them up in towards P4, they're having a great run here this afternoon, evening, yep. Whatever it might be.
Yeah, Orion Race Team you're specifically talking about there. Had to look up some information on them because this is one of the first times I've honestly seen them as well. And this team is having a strong run, absolutely. They've been able to keep the car clean, and they've just consistently been going up the grid. They started in 49th overall in this race. It's a plus 15 since the drop of the green flag. That's how well they've been going, and how fast that car has been, and how consistent they've been.
Yeah, they were one of the last 5 cars on the racetrack. 54 cars started this race, and they currently sit 34th overall. And, they would have been, obviously one of the final handful of GT3 machines to roll off. They were inside the bottom half of the running grid for sure. Now they have themselves in the top 5. So that's what I love about these endurance races. You can really make some great things happen here. As we'll continue monitoring other gaps, though, out there on the racetrack. Gap right now on the racetrack, though, Justin. What was the gap when Red Bull came off of pit road when we were doing our break? Because right now it's 50.8 seconds, and Max is taking a second to a second and a half basically every lap out of Seb.
The gap needs to be much bigger. It was around more than 20 seconds. I can guarantee that much between those two drivers. And the discussion, and this is including, mind you, the fans who've been keeping up and with him on their own private Twitch channels, as well as with the strategists amongst that, where they need to be at least 30 seconds ahead of Red Bull Racing Esports to have a chance. Because the way Sebastian Job and co have handled their fuel window, they don't need that splash and go.
Oh, big problems almost for Sebastian Job out of turn 1. This is one of the other risks of double stinting the tires through turn 1. Just got tight. All 4 wheels off onto the grass, and he nearly spun that car on the exit of turn 1. Replay up, watch for the push. Little bit of understeer right there, and just pushing a little bit wide, and that's a big wiggle. It doesn't look like a big wiggle, but that felt pretty big. If Sebastian Job got away with one, and that's going to be probably a few tenths in favor of Max before even turn 2.
And that's where experience definitely comes into play, because any more sharper to the right, that bobble right there on the steering column, that's going straight to the Armco barriers. What a heck of a job to save that machine. But as that was going on, I believe Simsa also having some issues. Here's exactly what I mean, though, with the wheel. Keep an eye on his hands and see how much of a quick sharp to the turn to the right just saves the car.
And it's like you said, Justin, it's just that quick jab. If you don't time that right, you are going off. You're spinning off into the tire wall on the right-hand side. We have had an issue, by the way, with the Simsa Daytona prototype. The number 030, Alex Traynor, is currently behind the wheel. Well, actually, no one's behind the wheel. I take that back. But Alex Traynor was the one in the car. But they're currently on pit road. They've been there for a few minutes. Big damage for them. Their race is done with a little bit over 90 minutes left to go in this event. So, huge problem happening here.
I wonder if we can take an angle of this, because this is a perfect example of what happens in nighttime. Again, it would have been in sunset on their lap 321 about, I'd say, 40-50 seconds ago, where there was a car blocking the track in SRC Squadra Corsa Black, who was blocking the track, stopped in the track, and caused that prototype to flip over. That's what can happen in the nighttime.
And we're starting to see that, Justin. I mean, like we said, when Paul was still here, we kind of had that 20-minute window where everything kicked off. And then it really kind of calmed down. Paul left, and we were just kind of quietly monitoring some gaps. Since the sun has gone down, and since there's been about maybe a round and a half of pit stops, now people are really starting to push. A lot of the European drivers, of course, it's starting to get late. It's currently, I believe, midnight GMT time right now. So people who are in eastern parts of Europe might be pushing 2-3 in the morning. And potentially people that are 3-4 hours into the stint, things have gone not so great.
Yeah, that was unfortunately about a few minutes ago, if I'm looking right. Again, it was an unfortunate situation, and now their recovery drive is done, because we mentioned they had to fix the back wing, that Simsa machine before, replace the whole back wing before, because of a stack up in turn 3 on the exit. Now they're in major trouble, and I believe we're going to try and see if we can get a look exactly what happened here, because it actually flipped them up onto the bottom of the bridge.
Yeah, we're trying to get it, but, we might have it here.
Yeah, I believe this might be it.
So going down in towards, this looks like run in towards Sunset to me, and see what happened to that number 8 car.
It'll come out of nowhere.
8th place running at the car, and running, and, oh, that's not great. And dunk to the pit wall, or to the civilian bridge there. Pedestrian bridge is what I'm looking for, and that's another race has been claimed here in the late stages of this one. The cars are starting to drop like flies, Justin. Our minds are getting melted by strategy, and cars are starting to get wrecked. And look at that huge incident for that Simsa Daytona prototype, up and over several times, and well, that's the end of it for them. If you have nausea issues, close your eyes.
Yeah. It was at that moment.
Pictures taken moments before disaster.
Yeah, it was at that moment where Alex Traynor is saying, I'm in trouble. Had no time to react. And you have no idea there's going to be a car there. So I'm just wondering, what in the world was that machine thinking? They stopped on the track for 3 seconds before that car came in. That prototype came in.
Yeah, they're going to be a little bit more than frustrated. And then you can see, obviously, on the replay, Simba coming down towards pit road. We're trying to see what happened to the Audi, actually, to even cause that. So here it is. The SRC squad just close the black car in toward Sunset Bend. And was it just a mistake, or did they tag that car? Yeah, it was just a mistake on their own. Like I kind of mentioned it earlier, Justin, it's just an awkward point on the racetrack to be. I don't even really think there's much they could have done. I think he was sitting there just trying to get the car down into reverse. Sometimes that can take you a couple seconds. But to a certain extent, there is a little bit of responsibility, I think, on the drivers who are driving into a situation in a blind corner where they know there's a caution. You know, because he would have been getting the yellow flag. I don't think there's much, you know, you can really do if you're the car that's sitting there, because you're always told not to pull back out into traffic and not to move. They're sitting there trying to let that DP go by. It's not like he was sitting there for very long. It was just a couple of seconds. I think there's a little bit of responsibility on that DP to not just barrel into a corner that has a blind corner that has a yellow waving at full pace.
I agree, and I wonder though if they thought the car was already up on the top side. At that point, I don't think they would have really known unless they looked at the relatives. It was just, again, a situation where they were committed to the bottom line, and there was a car there. Let's just say that, and that car they hit is still, I still think is in the top 10 of class.
Yeah, GT3 has definitely had some rough attrition. The prototypes and GTEs have really kind of messed them up a little bit. But we're halfway through this hour, Justin, which means we're theoretically about halfway through this strategy cycle. And right now it's Red Bull Racing Esports still leading. That gap has come down to 47.5, so about another 10 seconds. Actually, maybe closer to 7 seconds has gone by since the last time we talked about this gap. The interesting question is going to be here is, what do you do if you're Max Benecke and Team Redline Black in terms of the tires at the next pit stop? Do you take tires or do you don't? I feel like, you know, going to Hugo's point earlier, sometimes you have to do crazy things to win the race. I feel like Redline's only opportunity to win the race might be not taking tires, because I'm reckoning at the moment that at the rate they're going, the gap is going to be about 27 seconds when they come down pit road.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
unless Seb and Red Bull have a huge tire fall.
Yeah, that's the major thing. I don't expect a major tire fault, maybe by a couple tenths on a double stint or even a triple. The thing is, a triple stint, again, is kind of the rolling of the dice that we've been discussing a couple times. And I just don't see that happening. Check that. The pace right now is bigger than I thought. Pardon me.
What do you mean?
It's 1.8 seconds last time gained by Max Benecke. That is a lot more fall than I think either of us were thinking at first.
It is something that you can definitely have happen, Justin. We'll have to see how it stays.
Yeah.
But remember, there is still traffic to deal with, and even though like the Sebastian Job was consistent, he's still having occasional laps where he catches some traffic and maybe loses an extra second. So, for example, he did that 57.0 when it was 1.8, and then he immediately just did a 56.8 out there on the racetrack. My timing isn't updating quite right on my overlay, but it's you know, it is one of those things that you can have a potentially huge lap get caught up. The other thing that can happen that can with double stinting, Justin, is that when you get further and further into the stint, the tires can sort of hit a plateau, or even, you know, not necessarily a plateau, but they start behaving even worse. So it might feel like for 40 minutes of your 1 hour stint, the tires feel kind of okay. You might be a second, 1.2, 1.4 off, but it's kind of all right. I've had it happen in the past where you get about 2/3 of the way through the run, and then that last third, it seems like another second just comes off of the lap time. We're looking right now at the number 8, VRS Quanta SimSport car. That is a car that has been dominating this event for really the last 4 or 5 hours. They're on pit road for scheduled service, and this should be their second to final pit stop. Full service on the DPs as usual.
And Joshua K. Rogers, who has been a rocket ship, is back in the car, so there's a chance that car is going to be in very good hands. Let's just say that inside that purple room at the moment. Actually, pretty quick stop, off and away. 40.3 seconds on the jacks, off and away. Decent pit stop cycle.
Yep, pretty much everything they would have wanted. Let's be real, even if it wasn't a great pit cycle, they could have lost 3 seconds there and it would have been the end of the world. They're out there with a 1 minute lead as they currently sit on the racetrack. So things are going decently well, I think you could argue. for the VRS Commando Sim Sport number 8, and the team car in second. That's actually going to be something interesting, Justin, the way the cycles have been working out. If Apex is going to have an advantage there, because there have been windows where Apex have been ahead of that second place running VRS car, but it's not been for too long. It's Mitchell DeYoung now behind the wheel of the 18.
DeYoung's had some ups and downs in this race, but it's just been domination for this A car for the past 5 hours, ever since the track temp started to drop. The car and the way it handles just has gone their direction, and no one's been able to touch them, it seems. They've been their fastest lap is 2 tenths quicker than the rest of the field. Their average pace is really much quicker than a lot of the other competitors, and Constantine is still right now the only one I think that might be able to touch it. Here's the thing, Constantine's in the car downside. He's got to somehow gain a minute, and I don't think that's going to happen unless you somehow have something happen.
Yeah, the Apex, something's definitely been mismanaged by Apex in this race, I feel, Justin, because neither car has really had a bad thing happen since the last time we've seen them. We've seen Michele in the car. So you got to figure, we saw Michele in the car roughly around when we started this broadcast, with 6 hours left to go in the race. Here we are 4.5 hours later, and they've lost a lap. I mean, so I don't know if it's, they haven't had a single, it's not like those cars have crashed, it's not like those cars have spun, it's not like they've had some, single big issue. They've just slowly given up almost like 15 seconds, 20 seconds per stint for the last 4 hours. So yeah, there's definitely huge issues there, and I think it's probably just a strategy, like you said, running 7 or so laps shorter every single stint, which means they're pitting more often, but they're not getting any pace advantage out of it.
And the thing is too, and I've seen this especially with the 18 machine that DeYoung's driving. Right now, these VRS Commando Sim Sport machines were gaining 3 seconds a lap every time they pit on the Apex cars even. And just by having a couple further few laps with their overcut. It's going to be difficult to catch up when you're constantly running on a treadmill that's pushing you backwards the entire race, it seems. When it seems the strength of the car for Apex, at least in my opinion, was when it was very hot out. It's like as soon as it got cool, that's where VRS's preference in setup just came out of the box.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. Let's go back to your GTE lead fight. Of course, that's the one that's interesting. Still a 43-second gap, but the rate of how it is closing, like you mentioned earlier, Justin, at the start of the stint, it was about a second per lap, but it's opened up 1.3, 1.5 every trip around the racetrack. Last 3 has been 1.3, 1.5, 1.3. That Maximilian Beneque has been able to reel in over Sebastian Job. The gap is currently 43 seconds. I think with this situation, if you're Seb Job at Red Bull Racing Esports, you have to come down as early as possible, right? With the way that you've kind of handled this. This is one of the reasons I hate doing the double stint as the penultimate stint, because there's no way they're going to push a triple with this sort of time loss. And I don't think anyone who thought they could have done a triple, I think is a little bit silly, if I'm entirely honest. The reason, I like doing it last, Justin, because it gives you a hard stop.
Oh, trouble, Beneque.
What do you got? Oh, no.
Beneque contact with Henry Bennett in power slide, the 48.
We'll see what happened. I don't think that he was actually initially part of the incident, but Henry Bennett, yeah, I'm not sure what Max... So Henry was trying to get around a GT3 car. I'm trying to get another incident. Actually, no, I take that back. Henry Bennett, just on his own mistake, he just missed the hairpin all by himself, pushes out wide, and then, oh my... That's a tough one to call, Justin. On the one hand, Henry Bennett kind of rejoins the track, but he never really completely left the circuit. To a certain extent, I think Max just kind of drove into the back of a slow prototype.
I don't think he was expecting the prototype maybe to have that happen and then be right there. That's the only thing I can think of. Yeah, he just drove in the same line, maybe was starting, maybe prepared to make the move in the lap car, and then bam, there was a prototype there. He was trying to get around for our motorsport. I think that was more of the focus at the time for him, and where he didn't realize there was a driver making a mistake. I
mean, I don't see how that's possible. You have the glowing brake lights, you have the relative at your... I don't think there's any way you could ever not see that car having a mistake. Maybe we could get a replay on the roll bar cam But it just seemed to me, you know, Henry never completely left the racetrack. He always had a couple wheels on the track. So it's not like Henry just rejoined. He was always out there. And to a certain, you know, there is a point there, Justin, where, you know, you say, well, maybe he didn't see that Daytona prototype. Watch as he's coming off this hairpin. Well, we're currently going into turn 2, so we're a little ways back. There's going to be a point, I think, when they're going through the hairpin where you can see that Daytona prototype is slow and in the way, and Max just kind of holds his foot down. He just full throttles into the back of Henry there. Yeah, Henry is the one who made the mistake. But, you know, we'll see here, hard on the brakes. You see that Daytona prototype pushing a little wide, and it's clear as day that Daytona prototype is wide, and then he just full throttles into the back of it. I really don't know what Henry else could do there. Yes, Henry made the mistake, but you have to respond to the cars making mistakes in front of you, because they're going to try to stay on the track if they're already on the track.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say really at this point when it comes to Beneke. Yeah. Again, you need to know what was going on there. Again, you need to make sure he got to the right side of the car, so it's not good. Let's just say that. I think this is definitely going to hurt the pace a little bit, potentially, maybe. Again, this is going to definitely hurt the pace.
We'll have to see. We'll see how bad that damage actually is. It's hard to tell, honestly, because of the darkness. It doesn't seem like there's any body panels that are really bent, but it's really hard to tell. Now, hits to the nose, Justin, are always iffy, because on the one hand, a shot to the nose isn't a shot to the suspension, so he shouldn't have bent steering after that. And a problem he's going to have is aerodynamics, potentially, and how that car is not only going down the straights, but going through the corners. I see as we come to the lights, there is some bent body panels. For this lap is going to be the first indicator, and he still has good speed. He ripped off a 55.6 there. I don't think that really hurt him that much. We'll look at some of his other laps. He was doing 55, 5s, 4s. He's within about the same tenth of the lap he just did as he was previously. I don't think that car's hurt at all.
At this point, I think he's definitely going to have to breathe a sigh of relief in that case, because there's been cases where we've seen hits like that completely demolish some of the cars today. So at this point, you got to keep pushing on, but at the same time, I don't see him backing off at this point. I see him trying to push the issue on every single car at this rate.
So we'll see what happens here coming up on whatever this final pit stop sequence is going to bring. Current gap, by the way, is 42.5 seconds currently on the racetrack, and that is in the window. The reason that's important, Justin, is that is in the window that for Team Redline Black, when they make their final pit stop, they are in the window that they could make that stop and come off of pit road with the race lead. From where they sit now, it'd be about a 17 or so second advantage. With the pace advantage they have, I think they can push that out to about 25 seconds. Should they choose to double stint, and should Sebastian Job choose to take tires, spoiler alert, they better.
Yeah, at this point, Red Bull is going to be way off in terms of pace. It's going to be a massive gamble. Yeah, at this rate, this has got to be one of the more intriguing races we've seen in a little while, to say the least, with the way it's kind of developed. It could go either way at this point, to be honest, though.
Yeah, it really could. I mean, it could go either way. It's hard to really tell. And, you know, we saw that little moment that Team Redline just had, the Max Beneke just had. We could easily see a moment like that for Sebastian Job, not really out of the realm of possibility, especially dealing with old tires. It can make it really difficult trying to deal with the lap traffic, and we can see that the time is still struggling here for Sebastian Job, a 57.1 last time around the racetrack. That's about 0.8 of a second off the pace he's been running. Problem is, Max, I think, got caught up by some traffic, Justin, and he did a 56.2, so Sebastian kind of lost the minimum.
Absolutely. At this point, it's going to, again, come down to the wire. At this point, if you're Beneke, you take advantage of the clean air you're in right now. You try and put in hot laps. Fuel is not the main thing, it's time. Do you have enough time to gain the ground you need to be in the right ballpark? I'm curious, though, once the pit stops come down again in the final hour, how Red Bull Racing, again, plays it out. We talked about it a little bit. I'm curious if Red Bull Racing would then take the pace advantage compared to what we're seeing right now.
Well, I mean, they definitely will when they have the tires. I think there's no question that should Redline choose to double stint the tires, I think Red Bull will easily be the quickest cars out there on the racetrack. The question is, though, is what will the pace advantage be? Because now you're almost getting into which manufacturer double stints the tires the best. The BMW, the Porsche. I know the BMWs in the past been very stable, but, you know, we're obviously talking about, you know, the first event we've seen with some of the changes to the tire dynamics and, you know, almost to the new tire model. We've got a fresh BOP for this event. It's really, really hard to guess which of these cars is going to be better at this stage of the race. You know, we're talking, you're going to be 11 hours of track wear and rubber being put down. The track temp is going to be, probably the coldest it's been all race. And still, we actually leveled off to 71 degrees. I thought this track was going to cool off much quicker than it actually is ending up doing. It's going to be really hard to say, I think, what could be the situation here in terms of what the tire life is based on manufacturing.
Yeah, this is gonna, again, I don't think it comes down to manufacturer. Again, it comes down to strategy. I mentioned this at the
No, but I mean, if the Porsche is better on double stinted tires than the BMW, it certainly will come down to manufacturer.
Actually, actually, you're right on that one. Yeah. Because, there's that difference that might definitely come in. Yeah, this could be intriguing because a majority of the field for the class, yes, indeed, is Porsches. The BMW, one of the few, is Red Bull. So I think it's going to absolutely be intriguing as a bit of a dancing move on screen.
A bit of a dancing move, someone grabbing a little bit of oversteer, it looks like, as we're on board with, I believe, Augustin Canapino, and he's trying to reel in MSI Esports GTE of Salvio Tollins. I think this Williams Esports BenQ car and MSI, they've been locked together for like the last 2 or 3 hours, Justin. It feels like we've gone to them and away from them a couple of times.
Yeah, and before, mind you, it was the opposite way around, and this is continuously going up the running order just about in terms of this field, and I think MSI is starting to get right to their stride. We've seen they were a little bit faster in Sector 2 especially when it was still sunny, but now in the nighttime it seems they're starting to get slipstream help. R4R Motorsport, though, is not making it easy, pardon me, just up the road and is allowing this Williams Esports BenQ machine to close right back up.
Yeah, they are. So that's definitely making this fight a little bit closer. As you can see here, they work through them off. And off now down towards the back straightaway. And that Williams Esports BenQ Porsche is very, very much in the rear view of MSI Esports. Down this back straightaway, will they be close enough? I don't think so. Draft shouldn't be a factor here, Justin, but they're going to be close for the coming laps.
I wouldn't be surprised if at least this position battle and a couple others come down to the wire because there's many cars, again, that are converging. And at the same time, I see a lot of different strategies playing out. You mentioned the chance of a double stint. I see at least half the field in some of these in the GTs and GT3s taking the double stint. It's just a matter of which ones feel comfortable with it and which ones aren't.
Yeah, and the other thing as well, Justin, another thing to think about as well, something that might be a bit of an advantage in terms of Team Redline. I always talk about this, not just double stinting the tires, but if you want to do a double stint, try to make the stints before that double stint as long as possible. So, for example, if my plan for this race was we wanted to try to get to the end of the race and make it to our last stop with a double stint, I would try when in reason, try to go as long as you can on every single stint before it, because then instead of making that final double an hour long, maybe you can make it 40 minutes long. And when you're losing a second a lap, taking 10 laps out of that window that you're on old tires is actually a huge amount of time. You're talking 10, 15, 20 seconds depending on, your team, how much, how bad the tire wear is, however much you can take out of it. Something that Redline might have an advantage here is because they did their short fill the way they did, they'll be able to make their final stop about 8 laps longer, 9 laps longer, and that's going to equate to about 15 to 20 minutes that they will, if they choose to double stint, that they won't have to be on old tires.
Exactly, and that's again the logic of why they try to think that slash and go situation with having to at least try that different call because of their issues before. So that's just the way this race has gone, because just about everybody in the field has been on different stints now because just about everyone has had one problem or another, or has been able to save at least a couple extra laps. As this is going on, oh look, a BMW.
Yeah, we're taking a look right now. I believe that's the number 32. Indeed it is. Sebastian Schmallenbach for Radicals Online Track Racer chasing down Jonas Wallmeyer from Team Redline Green. Gap right now about 7/10 of a second, and Schmallenbach is really, really fast right now in comparison. Nearly 4, 5, 6 tenths every single lap. That BMW is quicker, and that this Porsche of Jonas Wallmeyer is about to get gobbled up.
Yeah, this is going to get a little bit dicey. The recovery drive for Team Redline has put them as high as this position. But again, you can only go as far as what the car can push for you. And at this rate, these drivers have been pushing to the point where it's nearly 2 seconds difference a lap. Here's the thing to think about. One is on old tires, one is on new tires. You can guess which one usually wins in that battle.
The one that's faster.
Which is new tires.
Definitely can be. Thing is, though, is you'd have to think, Justin, that this is almost going to be the inverse of what we're talking about with the Red Bull Redline battle.
Yeah.
And the other thing about that is that they're just getting here much, much closer. You know, this gap is obviously a lot closer. I'd say here for these two, you're talking about a much, much bigger advantage in terms of double spinning the tires than what we're seeing with the likes of Red Bull and the Redline Black Machine, because you're talking about a half-second gap versus a 37-second gap. So there's probably a little bit more in it if you choose to do the double here between these two.
Yeah, and you can guess which team out of those two, based on the numbers mentioned before, that would be viable to do it. Redline, they're going to probably have to take tires, realistically. Radicals, they can potentially take the double stint and gain a ton of time in terms of net time, not in terms of lap time, to try and push themselves forward.
The other thing that's interesting here is that in some ways this Radicals group is getting a preview of what their car is going to be doing on old tires based on what Sebastian Job and Co have done. So that might actually play in their decision. Here comes the move, though. They've got to run down this straightaway. They want to get this move done, and this is definitely a wise choice. In towards turn one, move that BMW up a spot. Team Redline Green trying to fight back on the cutback, but nothing in it. No way to make that stick. Move Radicals Online Track Racer into 7th.
Well, that was coming either way again with the fresher tires because the pace is smoother in that regard. So Radicals can just try and sail off and away since they're about 15 minutes or so around, give or take, from the realistic pit window to make it to the checkered flag.
Something interesting else to take away from this little duo, Justin, is actually the pace of Jonas Wallmeyer. Because remember, that's a Porsche on old tires. We've seen a BMW that's leading on old tires, and we're kind of hypothetically talking about what might happen with the Redline Black car should it choose to double stint. And this might be an interesting preview, and they've actually had relatively decent pace. Granted, they've only been out there for a handful of laps, but I see a number of laps in the 56s. They're in the 58.0 in there, but with the traffic at the moment, I kind of assume that that's an outlier because the lap immediately after that with a 56.7, that might be a good indicator for what Max Benecke has to deal with should he decide to do the double stint. And, you know, hypothetically speaking, Max is probably a bit quicker than Jonas. You know, there's probably going to be another 2-3 tenths in there that Max is getting out of the car that Wallmeyer currently isn't getting.
That's actually a great point, and you mentioned this about 30 minutes ago, the potential difference of double stint pace with different manufacturers in where that could come to play. That's actually the perfect example right there because it seems as though, and this could also be the difference in what the teams have adjusted for their tires potentially in terms of their suspensions as well. That Redline has something set up to have that pace we were discussing a little bit before. Red Bull Racing Esports might not be able to match that same pace potentially.
And actually, another takeaway, Justin, is Jonas actually isn't really losing that much time compared to the end of his stint. So the end of his actual stint, Jonas was in the 56s. He wasn't in the sort of mid to low 55s like a lot of the people at the pointy end of the field is. So Jonas, before he made his pit stop, was 56.0, 56.1, 56.6, 56.3, 56. That was when he was out there on the track before the pit stop. After the double stint stop, 57.0, 56.9, 56.6, 56.7, like I said, the 58 in there, 56.7. He recently just ripped off a 57.4 when he was getting past So there was traffic inhibiting that lap. So he's not only losing a few tenths in comparison to what he was doing before the pit stop. So it's going to be really interesting to see. The Porsche might actually be better on the old tires for these Redline guys when this gets much, much closer. That said, 1 hour and 6 minutes left in this race, Justin. Red Bull has to be coming down pretty much any single lap they can. I think they need to get these tires off the car ASAP.
Yeah, this is going to come down to the one, to say the least. Just trying to double check the exact pit time for lap 302 the last time for Red Bull. So they can go at least another few laps. Remember, they've gone 32 laps a stint. Realistically, they need to go that mark anyway, potentially. So, and here's another thing to think about too, potentially, the longer you can stretch this final run potentially, if you get within under an hour, the less fuel you have to put on the car, and it can come down to vital seconds in the pit lane, potentially, to decide who wins the GT class.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's going to be really close. Right now, the gap is 35 seconds. Like we said, that is in the window. That's well within the window, actually, that Max Benecke could just take fuel only and come out with the race lead. Right now, that race lead, Johnston, would be about 25 seconds. And that's what I'm saying, and that's why I keep saying that Red Bull has to do is they need to come down pit road ASAP, because right now they're just hemorrhaging time with the laps they aren't able to do. Though that said, they've settled into the 56.6s. Sebastian adds a few. I think the tires have plateaued as the fuel is burnt off, so the tires aren't getting worse. They just sort of got to a point and stabilized, and because the car is light, the tires aren't getting any worse. But he certainly seems like he's sort of in around this 56-second bracket right now. Off of turn 17, he's going to go another lap, though. That'll take him about 1 hour and 3 minutes.
Still expected to stay at least a few more times. Compare that to Redline Black again. This is the perfect scenario, I think, for Benecke is no one around him, no one to hold him up, and just go straight flat out. He's been consistently hitting 155.5 for the most part to 155.2s when no one has been around him. It's almost like he's been a robot, some of his fans have been saying. The way he's been able to get around this racetrack is so consistent. And you kind of need that mindset in this type of situation. You can't let your emotions get to you. You need to stay focused 100%. That's what he's doing. He's laser focused.
He's brought in 3.7 seconds the last 3 laps, has Maximilian Benecke, so he's definitely a man on a mission. The way he's currently driving right now, doing everything he can to bring that gap down and make it so it's as little as possible, or as much as possible rather, when he eventually makes his stop. But man, this is going to be exciting to watch, Justin. Actually, wait a minute. I've just had a realization. He's 34 seconds back. He will not have the lead currently. If he doubles his tires, they'd come out even.
Now this is going to get curiously interesting.
I've been saying the wrong thing for an hour.
I was going to say he needed to have that amount of gap. It's all going to come down to what Red Bull does, I think, really, because if Red Bull takes tires, they can pass him. I think they can potentially pass him. If they do the unthinkable, then it goes into Red Line's court.
If Red Bull try the triple stint, I think you take tires if you're Max Benecke. I don't think there's any question. Because I think that'd be such a big risk. I think you just take the time loss and go with the safer call of not trying the double. But I don't think there's any way Red Bull even thinks the triple.
Yeah, I've said it multiple times. I don't think you try it either. It's just going to come down to, again, these are the possibilities, mind you, Randy, that these teams, though, are thinking of. And there's been these types of discussions from these teams in post-race interviews for events such as this. Daytona 24, I think, was one of the examples where they were factoring in, there was one team, for example, for an event where they were thinking, do we go and send somebody on the tires on a double stint? Do we keep the same driver in on double stint, or do we take tires with a new driver, for example? They chose, you have to gamble sometimes. In that case, the strategy in that regard, the gamble worked out. By the way, 6th and 7th is dicing up, because Beetle Racing Team is all of a sudden back in the picture for a top 5.
Yeah, so that's a close fight right here between Vila Racing Team Euronic and Orion Racing HPP. That's Fulvio Berrezzini. 1.1 second gap at the moment. And that position has just changed hands, Justin. So this gap is, I think, opening up. I think Vila has just gotten that pass done, and they are running away from Fulvio at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely they are. And the thing is, too, they're on fresher tires. Orion on old tires. So these are the types of things we're going to see. Mind you, Orion Race Team was the only team inside the top 8 to double stint in the GT3s.
Yeah, that's right. I think there was another team that tried it, but I might be incorrect about that. Man, I am interested to see, though, 1 hour, 1 minute on the clock. Red Bull Racing coming through turn 17, and they are not coming down pit road yet. So they're going to be staying out until past the 1 hour to go mark here, Justin, before they eventually get off this set of tires. And they actually, I mentioned a little bit ago, it seemed like maybe the tires hadn't fallen off. I think that cycle has started. He just did a couple laps ago with a 57.7. This last trip around with a 57.0. I think those tires may be going off a little bit in comparison to what we've seen. 2.1 the last trip around the racetrack is what Max Benecke was able to reel in. He's about to cross start finish, and it's a 57.0 for Red Bull, and it's going to be a 55.3 for Max Benecke. So that's another second and some change reeled in.
And the more that gap goes down, the more it's going to get interesting again, because still trying to process all of this at this moment in my head with Maximilian Benecke. Hey, if Red Bull does what we are both thinking in terms of taking tires, is there going to be enough time for Sebastian Job or whoever's in the car to even close up? What would be the difference? About 30s. Again, the more time Maximilian gains now, the better it's going to be for them for the final stint.
Something as well for someone to keep in mind, Justin, just to melt your brain a little bit further, because I've just seen someone mention this in the chat. Ricardo Edelman said 2 to 3 laps till red line black pit stop. I don't think so, because you have to remember they came down pit road and they did that little short 7 or 8 lap stint when they took 11 seconds of gas and they stayed out there for 8 or 9 laps. That should push their potential pit stop back about 8 or 9 laps. So instead of coming in, right at the hour, they could potentially, I think, push to about 50 minutes, Justin, maybe even closer to 45 in comparison to Red Bull. So let's see what's going to happen as Red Bull is going to be on pit road this time.
Yes, indeed, and there's that scheduled pit stop. They're inside that window to make it to the end. But in about 30 seconds, we're going to get the answer of what they elected to choose.
I can nearly guarantee with certainty what the decision is going to be here from Red Bull. It's going to have to be a full service stop, I think. Does Sebastian Job stay in the car? I think more than likely he has definitely been the hot shoe for this group today. Freddie Rasmussen had some good stints, but Seb has definitely been the class of a Red Bull Racing Esports. They sit down on towards pit road, and we just wait now for that car to get jacked up in about 8 or 9 seconds time. It should be at about 32 seconds, 27, 28, and I think I'd be shocked if that car just rolls off of pit road in a couple of moments and that car gets jacked up. That was the only call for them to make.
Yeah, they had to at this point, and that was what we were thinking would be the preferred call. They could have took the ultra risk, but it would have been too much of a risk at Sebring. Maybe at a low tire day track, we see that call of a triple, but not today. Now it's the matter, though, of where they're going to cycle with Redline when Redline has to come down, because Maximilian Benecke I think we're both expecting a double stint now from that number 1 car.
I think it's the only way they can think of maybe winning this race. 1 minute 1.6 is what that was on pit road, or the 125.4. We check in over with Team Redline Black, and it's going to be interesting to see how long this is going to be. What is the current gap that they have? The gap is 54 seconds. But remember, you can chop about 30 seconds off the pit stop time with the potential tire strategy. This is going to be so... I have no idea what to think about this, Justin. I think Red Bull might be in the good position right now, but we have seen that Red Bull BMW make a couple of mistakes on cold tires today, and Seb's out there on a dark racetrack on brand new tires.
And on top of that, too, here's another thing to factor in, too. the further red line goes in terms of laps, as mentioned, the less fuel they can take. There's a chance they can gain an extra couple seconds of the pits stops, but that might delay the inevitable. Again, Red Bull is in, I agree with you, in a good situation to be able to get this job done. They need to make sure they make no mistakes, though, and have what happened a few hours ago.
And not only, you talk about, the fuel fill, Justin. I've mentioned this a couple times as well. Because of that extra 7 or 8 laps, if they choose to double stick the tires, that's that many laps less that they have to have the old tires. So instead of having to go, Red Bull Racing Esports basically just had to do a full hour on old tires. Redline's not going to have to do that because they don't have to pit for about another 5 or 6 laps. So they're only going to have to be out there for maybe 45 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit shorter even, on old tires, should that be what they decide to do. So I think Max Benecke and co. are in a very, very nice situation right here with the way they've managed this. I criticized the call to take the splash and dash when they did it, but may have actually instant up a really interesting window.
Have to keep an eye here on this lap, though. They would have to make it 29 laps if they came down this time. So this is all while, mind you, the track is at the quickest it's been. Because Rogers, as we were discussing, is set a Perco lap in a 150.926.
Yeah, what have they been doing? 26 laps? 27?
Well, this team, just going to double check the exact count, for example. Yeah, around that mark, give or take.
All right, so it might be here then. I may have misjudged that. I thought they were closer on that. I thought they would have a bigger advantage.
If not a couple minutes.
Yeah, I thought they would have had a bigger advantage from when they did their little splash fill, but maybe I overestimated how much of an advantage that actually got them. Into Sunset Bend, though, final corner, inside of an hour to go, by the way. We totally missed hyping that up, but off the final corner they come. They're not coming down pit road yet, so they're going to keep on cruising as it goes. And in a couple laps, we'll start taking a look at lap times. What it is now is one of them's out there with full fuel and new tires, and Max is at the end of his run on a light tank and probably deciding what they're going to be doing.
Yeah, at this point, you have to be discussing at least a little bit to see what the team, or at least getting some advice from the team as soon as they head towards the pit lap. They have to be keeping an eye on the fuel numbers. They have to be telling them what's going on. And of course, those are, mind you, within private communications, because even when you have your own stream up to, say, your own fan base, we talked about this a little bit, for example, with BRS having their own broadcast feed on Twitch. You don't want your competitors to know what's being discussed on the team radio, because there is a saying that has been said, and this is a good point when it comes to that. It's the downfall of teams if you accidentally let even a little bit of your team communications out to the open.
You're definitely right about that. You're going to want to keep that, like you said, kind of like I said earlier, when I questioned the fact that they made their short stop when they did. You want to play your cards close to your chest, in my opinion. It always is. Whether you can make it all the way, you don't want to reveal that until you end up doing it, or whatever the case may be. It is just something I've always been a fan of. But we'll have to watch here, basically lap on lap. But pretty much, I'll be honest, we're kind of just following this red line car to see when eventually they end up coming down pit road, because that's going to really make or break the entire race. 11 hours and 7 minutes now have slowly worked up to this point. Meanwhile, in your other categories, people who are curious, none of the lead battles are really up for grabs. The lead in GT3 is currently separated by 44 seconds. We'll check that in a bit. But here comes red line. They hit pit lane right here, right now. And now it is decision time.
Again, expect a double stint realistically, because the pace is pretty close. We've seen they're pretty good, these red line machines on the double stinted tires. For example, that green machine, that was the potential test car. The problem is the fact that that same car flipped to the 156.7s in the past 20 minutes or so. You have, at this point, for them to realistically have a chance, you have to take no tires, I think.
So let's see what's going to be the call for them. Max Benecke is staying in the car. That's the indicator that it might be fuel only. and definitely no tires. The decision should be any second now if it's a no tire call. 31, 32 should be getting sent out. Res build, 34 seconds. That's a full batch of gas. Don't think he needed it, but they decided to take it anyways, and they are going to roll. Here comes Red Bull Racing Esports down the front straightaway. This is going to be tightly contested into turn 1 on the pit exit. That GT car you're seeing on the left going through first, that is not the Red Bull Racing Esports car, but right out in front of Sebastian Job, that is Max Benecke. That's your fight for the race lead. New tires versus old, BMW versus Porsche, and there's a car in the grass through the first sector. That's the other Redline car driven by Alexei Yusa-Yakola.
What a timing for them to spin around, to say the very least, and not what you want to see when your teammate has just come out of the pit lane. But this is going to get interesting. It's the battle, as you mentioned. New tires behind, old tires in front. And as we've seen, if you've got fresh rubber, you've got extra grip on the corner entry for the braking zone, extra grip for the corner exit. There's a chance Benecke is passed like a sitting stone here.
I am a little bit curious, Justin. It was a 34-second stop for Max Benecke. That's going to be basically brimming the car. That's as much fuel as you can get in it, and he came in with less than an hour to go. I don't think he would have needed that much gas. I think Max sat there for an extra 5 or 6 seconds that he really truthfully needed to.
Here's the thing, and this is apparently, we talked about him hitting the car in front. There's apparently 17 seconds of optional damage. That was slowing down the very top end speed of that car. If he elected to fill it up to the brim and get that extra little bit of damage repaired, he might have thought it might have been worth sacrificing that 4 seconds to be able to try and have that extra little bit of speed for right here.
He's going to defend now in towards turn 17. Here they go. Sebastian Job, Max Benecke moving a little bit aggressively there. Back over to driver's left into the finals corner on the racetrack. Max is forcing Seb way out onto the wider section before they turn back in, and Max has good speed on the old tires, but Sebastian Job will have the exit speed down the front straightaway, side by side for the race lead in GTE. They are nose to nose. I've said the outside can work in turn 1 several times today, but it has not yet, and Sebastian Job will cycle back into second, and Max immediately defensive for the braking into turn 2, trying to keep it as best he can over the curb, and that Redline BMW is on Max Benecke, as close as you could possibly be onto Big Bend. Slipstream once again for Sebastian Job on the run down in towards the hairpin. That BMW trying to eye a move, but there's no room. Marks back to the outside. Not quite there, I don't think. Max is not going to outbrake himself, and Sebastian will grab a bite of oversteer. Max is held on for now.
And I was expecting this. Maximilian Benecke isn't just going to sit back and let this opportunity go away to potentially win. This is not going to help.
Daytona prototype, Apex Racing trying to get around Max, opens the door for Sebastian Job through Cunningham on the run in towards Tower. Max is able to get clear to the defensive. Is there a dive from Seb? No. Max cuts it off, but Max is loose. Little bit of a mistake at Tower, and that moves Red Bull Racing Esports into the lead with Sebastian Job, and you have to wonder that that's probably it for Redline.
I think that might be. He had to fight as hard as he could. He wasn't going to make it easy. But now it's Sebastian Job that might be in control of this now, because as long as he can keep the car on the track, he's got the fresher tires to just try and run away.
He's got the new tires, and he has broken draft for the most part. Sebastian Job just has to hold on here for 48 minutes, but the Sebring International Raceway, especially with the finishes under the lights, has the history of making fantastic finishes, doing everything he can to continue to break the draft. Is Sebastian Job over Max Benecke, and that gap has opened up as they come across start finish. It's going to be about 1.25 seconds. I think it's actually, no, I take that back, closer to 0.7 of a second, overestimating the gap a little bit on my part. But that gap is continuing to grow as they go into the end of the first sector again.
You have to get credit, though, for Maximilian Benecke to close up as much time as he did, to have himself a realistic chance to try and fight here at this point of the race. But we knew that unless Red Bull Racing did something radical, that they would be on top of one another, and Red Bull Racing Esports wasn't going to just give a tire advantage to Maximilian Benecke. They had to realistically take the tires here and they are now, again, in a great situation, just run away, especially with that cliff at the end of the run.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Max is in a pretty horrendous situation right now. I don't think there's any way he's going to be able to keep pace with that Red Bull car. He might stick with them for a little bit, but that gap is, I think, pretty quickly going to grow to over a second. But I've been wrong before, and while I'm not pulling any favoritism here, I wouldn't mind seeing this race end up quite interesting. But as the gap continues to grow, Max is just tight again at Tower Corner. He lost 3/10 just through Tower Corner just now, and he's losing a bunch of time down the straightaway. That's basically going to be the end of that fight. Let's take a look at a couple of your other gaps on the racetrack and fights to the lead. Vendaval Sim Racing Blue is absolutely dominant situation right now. Right now, Justin. Granted, there's some pit stop sequence happening, but Vendaval is, I think, nearly a full lap ahead of anyone out there on the racetrack. We saw the Williams car get into that trouble earlier, no fault of their own. Ford getting into the back of them, and Vendaval is pretty much there to take advantage. And the BRS Coena Simsport, I mean, they're out in dominant position right now ahead of your Daytona prototypes. There's really not many other close fights up in any of your classes, unless there's some sort of fuel issue. Maybe in DP, maybe we could see the second BRS car fight with their teammates.
I think Lorenzo Bonder might have actually brought up a good point here too. If there's an extra lap, I think Red Bull might be in a good situation because they were able to save a lot of these laps, 32 a stint. Some teams might be a bit closer.
Well, Lorenzo's point is that he thinks Red Bull doesn't have the fuel. You mean Red Line?
I think still that's the thing. They pit with 31 to go. Red Bull has consistently hit 32 lap seconds. I think Lorenzo brought up that point because there's thought of the potential of an extra lap if you aren't at the halfway point of the track to get the white flag.
Those GTEs, apparently according to Lorenzo, are running 55-minute averages, so they're not quite hitting the hour. Of course, we were talking about that a little bit earlier on. So, yeah, this is going to be really tight. And the other actually thing to keep in mind, Justin, is that if there's a potential there, if this track cools off a little bit, you typically use a bit more fuel on cold track. You typically see that actually at Monza. Back when we had the old GT World Championship, we had a couple actually cold races at Monza, and it was really, really hard to actually save the fuel. Because you have so much more traction, it means you can brake later and you can pick the throttle up sooner because the cars just had so much grip in cold weather. And because of that, it's hard to save fuel when you're being on the throttle longer down the straightaway and able to pick the throttle up earlier in the corner. So as this actually gets colder, you might see these guys, you know, I don't think there'll be enough of a pace jump there to really make a difference, but it might be something to think about.
Just the thought is the main thing. Mind you, Red Bull Racing Esports, we've seen that car go a little bit quicker in some portions of the run. Sebastian Job, I think, is driving safe. Mind you, there's a battle for 13 on your screen too. Apex Racing Team has had some roller coaster moments. Verfollegt Sim Racing, we haven't mentioned them in 5 hours, having a decent run here towards the end.
Yeah, that they definitely are, as we are now inside the final 45 minutes of this race. And spending a little bit of time screaming over the happenings of everything that was going on. I've kind of roasted my voice a little bit. Get a drink, so we're going to take a short break here on RaceSpot TV, and let's do some double stinting fan immersion here. Let's go on board with Max Benecke, trying everything he can to manage the gap to Sebastian Job in front. You'll get an idea of what it's like wheeling these race cars with the older tires. We'll be back in just a couple. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. After a little bit of RaceBot TV fan immersion, we'll be bringing the rest of this to you, I think, uninhibited. So don't you worry about that. For those who've been keeping an eye on the gap and wondering what the pace difference might be with Max's old tires, 4.7 seconds is currently the difference. We're currently trying to get something sorted for the end of the race. So just me at the moment. Justin Prince is checking some audio stuff with a certain individual, a certain party, so that they shall see. But let's do a little bit of a rundown. Let's do your top 8 rundown for the last 35 minutes and get ready to go in towards the end of this race. Let's start with your prototype division. VRS Quanta Simsport, like we said, leads over currently Apex Racing Team number 91, and they have a pretty sizable gap there. I believe a pit stop is still owed by that second place running Daytona prototype, and I think so. They're currently 11 laps into the stint. That's going to be tight. I don't think they're going to be able to get there to the end. Then you have VRS third at Apex fourth. Then you have another VRS car, Movano, Elio, and Team RSO running out your top 8 in your prototype category. But that's going to be fun to watch and keep an eye on over towards the end of this race. Now let's go to GTE, the one where all of our focus has been. The only really one of the categories where it seemed like it was going to have an interesting fight for the lead, and it kind of panned out. Red Bull Racing currently leading the way, and Team Redline in second on the old tires, losing by about a second or more per lap. Actually, last lap was only a couple tenths, so I'm actually quite well. Vendeball in third with Williams rounding out your top 4. MSI, Porsche 24 driven by Redline, Team Redline Green, and AAA Esports are going to round out your top 8 in your GTE division. And then back over to GT3, we got Vendeball Sim Racing Green leading the way, Black Star Racing in P2, 42-second gap there. And then Core Sim Racing in third, Simza in fourth, SUV Esports in fifth, Team Fordzilla 6th, 7th you got Team Orion, and MSI Esports GT3 rounding out your top 8 there. And as you can see, only really one kind of close fight. That's the fight between 6th and 7th on the racetrack, and that's Ben Gonzalez, who's getting chased down right now by the Orion Racing Team HPP of Fulvio Barozzini. So second and some change between those two, although I think that position has recently changed hands. May be wrong about that, but you see it's still close as Justin is now rejoining us.
Yes, apologies there as Fordzilla.
Oh, you better be sorry.
Anyway, on screen, this is not helping Orion's case with the fact that he has to let by Red Bull, but it's going to break up the battle we're keeping an eye on a little bit with Fordzilla. Is recovering from their side slide through Sunset about an hour and a half ago. But again, this has been a quietly solid day for this team, and what has been some good speed shown by the HPP sponsored car.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right about that. I mean, both of those teams have had good speeds, and I'd say definitely punch above their weight a little bit as we're coming to the final half hour of this race. GTE leader coming cycling through. Now, what do you make of this situation right now in Daytona Prototype here, Justin? Because Apex, you reckon Apex could make this work? They've done about 11 laps on this stint. I don't think there's any way to make it to the end. I think both Apex cars surely should have to pit again. No, I take that back. Only the 91. The 90 is just come down pit road. They should be good to the end.
Yeah, right now, I think that you're exactly right in terms of I don't think they can make it to the end realistically, especially with the 91. I mean, you could try it, because why not at this point? It might be a long shot chance to try and come in with the W. But even then, they're 48 seconds behind Kevin Ellis Jr. to Joshua K. Rogers. The pit delta is for some of these drivers who took 25-second pit stops in the DPs last cycle through, 48 seconds. So realistically, I don't think they can even out-strategize Coanda without coming out right with them.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right. We know Coanda owes us another pit stop, I believe, how long has it been since Josh got him now? That's been about 5 laps. So actually, at least the leading Coanda car should be good. What about the 18? The 18 has just recently stopped. Yeah, I think Coanda has already made their final pit stops. Yeah, I think we're looking at a Coanda 1-2 here, unless I just gave him the commentator's curse.
To answer the question, Rogers came in for lap 354, but it's been a solid day for VRS Quanta Simsport in that purple room. It's going to have a very happy celebration, potentially. That's the thing, potentially, because you still have to complete an estimated 18 laps to go, 18 to 17 laps to go. But for Rogers, up at the front of the field, it's been domination station. Absolute domination station. At one point, he was tracking to potentially the lap Mike Mitchell beyond.
Yeah, Mitchell has been doing good, but you're right. I mean, right now it's just 48 seconds, 141 back to the Mitchell car, and then 148 back to the Apex Racing team car and fourth. It's just been they just opened up the taps, didn't they, Justin? I mean, there was that period when we just started the broadcast. We had Apex Racing Team leading the way. It seemed like there was going to be some crazy fight between the two of them because Michele Constantini just looked like he was on another level, but Apex they just couldn't keep that up. And what's odd to me is that team that was looking the best of the two Apex cars and leading at one point, that has actually fallen to the worst of your top four that have been competitive the entire race. So the Apex Racing 91 has actually gotten the better end of their assistant car, the 90.
And Constantini somehow found some type of speed and a good amount of comfort when the track got hot, I think, in the 90 machine. And I think once the track cooled off, and once the driver swap came in, it almost seemed like all the momentum was lost that they had gained, and Hart basically evened out to where the car's strength was. Constantini just has seemingly not been as good at hot temp. There's something too in that discussion point, Randy, where some drivers like hotter tracks, be able to have looser situations. Others, they thrive in colder temperatures. It seems like Constantini, at least here at Sebring, felt more comfortable in hotter temperatures.
Yeah, some people are definitely a little Red Riding Hood to motorsports. A little too cold and you're not doing great. A little too hot, not doing great. They're always looking for what's just right as they currently work through. Looking for any close fights we have on the racetrack, and honestly, Justin, I don't really see any looking at my timing screen. Everything seems to have kind of worked itself out. You know, maybe a couple fights that are within about 5 seconds, but nothing that's really super close or seems like it's coming down in them.
Yeah, the field has kind of separated itself out in terms of even the red boxes are by a couple seconds or so. But here's the thing, it's not over yet, I don't think, because remember, there are so many different strategies by these different teams. It is crazy. You've got Red, for example, take the GT class, Red Bull on fresh tires, Red Line on double stint Pinnacle, double stint Williams Esports BenQ, Porsche 24 on fresh tires, Red Line Green on, I believe, a triple stint, MSI Esports double. So that is just a mix of the top 7 of that class alone. So there's the chance that a lot of the strategies converge depending on how these teams have taken the different opportunities, strategy calls.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, definitely a lot of things starting to converge. Closest fight on the racetrack, by the way, seems to be the fight between Benball Sim Racing Blue and Williams Esports BenQ. That's the fight for third in GTEs. Valtteri Alander right now, who sits in third. About a second and some change off of, guess who we're talking about again, Justin? Augustin Canapino. Has he been out of that car? Okay, so apparently Alex Arana has done a stint or two. But I feel like every time we've looked at this Williams Porsche, Augustin has been the one who's hit it.
Yeah, well, they've been splitting time before you ask. They do have the fair share. It just seems like...
I don't think splitting time is the right way to describe it. I think... So I'm seeing Augustin, he started the race and did 120 laps, which is 4 stints, roughly. And then Alex did a couple stints. He went from 120 to 177, so maybe 3. And then Augustin was in the car from lap 178 all the way up to lap 294. And now he's been in since 323, and he's basically been running this out. So it's basically been Augustin has been running the race, and Alex has been there to make sure the fair share rule doesn't DQ it.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I don't think they're at risk of that. They're not even close to that risk from what I'm seeing. The fair share amount is within the ballpark to make it to the end comfortably. So it's worked out that way. And that sometimes might happen, Randy, though, with scheduling, where sometimes you might have to hold the fort for 3 hours. It's exhausting. But sometimes you're fortunate those wins. Sometimes you're Augustin, where you have to hold it out for... I'm looking to count in stints right at least 3.5+ hours in some of the stints today.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, for sure. But between the seat. Valtteri Landa currently doing his best to run away from Augustin. Augustin's had a couple laps where that gap has opened up. Yeah, he was able to reel in 3/10 the last trip around the racetrack, though, as we're inside the final half hour of this race, Justin. And, I mean, it's been sort of a, I don't want to say disappointing, but was seeming like, you know, when Paul left with about 4 hours to go, it seemed like everything was up for grabs. There was a fight in GT3, Daytona Prototype was looking spicy, and then GTE was looking really interesting, but almost like, I don't know, 70%, 80% of the fights we were really monitoring just kind of petered out.
Welcome to endurance racing, I guess you can say, because
okay, rude.
No offense. I wasn't trying to mean rude. I mean
flex, but okay.
I meant that it's a race that takes 12 hours. It's a 12-hour event, for this race. And battles ebb and flow. It's just the matter that the battles have flowed away at this point of the event.
Yeah, it's definitely as the way things go. 2 seconds now, the gap from Valtteri Landa to Augustin Canapino. I think that fight's pretty much over at this point, Justin. I mean, yeah, 24 minutes left to go. I don't want to say it's over, and obviously, you know, had it be not over. That would be cool. But you know what I mean? They seem to be just losing time when they need to be gaining it.
Here's the disadvantage when it comes to Williams, though, in this battle. Venable's got less fuel on board. And we talked about that. You can go a little bit quicker even on older tires when you have less fuel on board in the car. So that's kind of going to help them to try and continue to pull away. They're even pulling away just a little bit down the straightaways.
Yeah, you're definitely right. Definitely right about that. So, still keeping an eye out for any fights. Don't see much. I see Apex and Ravana here. 2.4 seconds to get between Jamie Flug and Maxime Bryant, and there was actually just seems like a pit stop sequence there. So Apex car currently sitting 13th, and Maxime Bryant from Abano maybe trying to make something of it and get back up into P13.
Team Redline Green actually had to come down and pit. Yeah, Jonas Wallmeyer just came in and out of the pits, and that was something where some of the Redline teams might have been in a splash-to-go situation. They just had to sacrifice a little bit of track time for an 18-second stop. They're now in P8 now. They're still potentially, maybe they might have a chance for one position. That's about it. The thing is, any mistake, they potentially could lose a spot.
You said Redline Green just picked, correct? What was the last pit stop? They turned in the last 350. They were in a 320, 319, 320. I'm just comparing this to Red Bull. I want to see if there's anything that could maybe happen here. Actually, no, I'd have to say probably not, because 319 was Redline Green's last pit stop before that splash and dash. 333 was Sebastian Jobs. So it was a 14-second or the 14-lap differential there. And I don't think I don't know. Lorenzo might have something. There may be if the race goes an extra lap, Justin, Seb might be in trouble. But unless the race goes that extra lap and the race ends up turning into like a 12-hour and some minute race rather than 12 hours exactly, could have a problem. Kaylee Costantini, by the way, just had a bit of a hip check with a GT car dealing with some lap traffic. That was MSI Esports GT3 machine that he just got into. Just a little bit of a hip check on the exit of turn 2. Forced that Audi off onto the grass, but he's able to recover and they keep going. But definitely not the way you want to be ending one of these things.
No, you don't want to end up gaining a lot of enemies either, because they're, based on what I've seen, iRacers have memories like elephants in terms of the drivers. No offense to the drivers, first off, in that where if anything happens between a team, based on experience, there's a chance it will influence how they race said team, not just in an event, but in near future races. So you don't want to not just have any incident, but you don't want anything to build up potentially. But downside for Apex Racing Team fans, that is Rogers lapping you.
And actually, we got another fight that just formed up, and then there's a couple of Redline cars here, Justin. Team Redline Green, we saw them do that splash and dash. I think Porsche 24 had to do something similar. Oh no, I take it back. They've not had to come down pit road, and because of that, they've now fight 7th and 8th in category. Team Redline, P7, P8, couple team cars technically, because driven by Redline is, of course, the Redline organization. But These two are going to be close, and with some the only Mercedes we have in the server holding up the red line green car, they're going to go 3 wide of the run to Cunningham, but Wallmeyer tells his teammate, nope.
Yeah, that FP0 simulator sponsor machine has seen worse for wear with some of the damage that's on the front nose at this point. But I think this might be a realistic battle, even with the difference in fuel, because remember, it was a bit of a bold call from Team Redline Green, where we talked about them with a double stint potentially before. If again the math is right, that's either a double stint right now or a triple stint situation.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that as things continue out here. So Jonas Wallmeyer on towards the Ullman straightaway off of Lamar. Let's see if Alexei Yakola is able to make up any time here as we're about to hit the 20 minutes to go marker. Headlights flashing at the team car saying, let me through, I'm faster. I don't think there's really much to gain here should they do so. It's only, it's another 20 seconds up to AAA Esports. And oh man, Alexei Yakola, Justin, he was doing a little bit of swerving down the back straightaway, and I think almost doing a little bit of it entering that final corner, and he just got a big bite of oversteer through the center of turn 17. I have a feeling Dom Duan's about to come tap Alexei on the shoulder and tell him to calm it down.
Yeah, at that point you're trying to maybe tell your driver, take a deep breath, you can get this to work, it's a teammate. Don't end up forcing something and wrecking both cars in the process. So that's got to be the thought process at this point. We'll have to see how Jonas races them. This is, mind you, for position, so that might also be a factor of why they're racing so hard for this.
Yep, you're right, and up into the spot. Oh, and he's way, way, way off. That was... What did he think he was running the old hairpin?
I think he just outbroke himself. And outbroke himself and a half. I mean, I like the effort. He wasn't going to make that stick, though.
I think he thought it was like 1996 again. That was, that wasn't even close. I don't know what Alexei's doing. I don't know if he's just, we're back here P8, but he nearly hit that Audi. If we can roll that on the nose cam, or even if we can do the gearbox cam on that Audi GT3 car, it's going to be like the greatest jump scare of all time when that Porsche cycles through. It's the next car in front. One more car. Yeah, this one. So you're going to see this car turn in, and the camera should kind of look away. And Porsche. And yeah, that was pretty bad. I don't know if Alexei's just messing around or what he's doing, just trying to mess with his friend and his teammate, but he needs to cool it down. And actually in the mix of this, Justin, he's actually lost a spot because Sebastian Schmallenbach is reeling in that red line green car. That gap is now half a second.
Yeah, this is getting dicey. I don't think he was trying to intentionally do that for obvious reasons, but now it's not going to be as easy for Wallmeyer because this Radicals machine has shown some great pace this entire run since they put on those tires with 2 hour to go mark around that point. And that Moto IMSA team, remember them? They're also looking to say hello.
Well, the Multiple IMSA team is way, way, way down the running order. They're in the windshield, but they are well down the running order from being even relevant. Bruno Spengler, currently the driver behind the wheel, they're 4 laps down. So they're just there on the racetrack doing everything they can. Probably trying to not run out of fuel again, if I'm honest. But yeah, Sebastian Schmallenbach on Jonas Wallmeyer. This should be a move that happens soon. Seb probably could have thrown the move down here at the hairpin. I will say, Justin, you said it's not going to be easy with Radicals now behind Red Line Green as opposed to a teammate. After seeing what Alexei just did, I don't think it was easy even with a teammate back there.
Yeah, I think, again, you play it smart if you're Radicals because you can see how much they're backing up. They're just waiting for the right moment. Maybe burping the throttle a little bit to save the extra little bit just in case, because in some cases, some teams might want an extra little bit of fuel in the tank in case you need it to be able to push. They're estimated these two cars about 9 laps to go. I think, though, you maybe even follow the prototype in Dion if you get in the right spot here. He's just behind him.
Yeah, you might just do that with the way the situation's currently going. Let's see what Schmallenbach decides to do. They're going to see that Daytona prototype in the rear view, surely, and I don't think that, that BMW not close enough to make a move on the Porsche coming out of Le Mans. So, but you see immediately into the slipstream, but I don't think that's going to be enough. We'll have to wait and see. New tires could open a big dive, but no move just yet.
mind you, Radicals did double stint on this final run, but when they were on the fresher tires, they were blistering quick. It's just the pace seems to have evened out to the 156s right now. But even then, remember, red line green's on a different window, and they know they need to be aggressive to make blocks like that.
I don't like that from Jonas at all. I think that was a little bit cheeky. You could maybe argue if that was a reactionary move or not. Now, obviously, there's no rule in, this not being a sanctioned event, so to speak. There's really not a specific rule written, but I think Jonas is kind of playing with fire a little bit here, Justin. Yeah, he's trying to hold on, but that was a really aggressive block and nearly threw the whole thing away for him as Sebastian's got the run now through Big Bend and down towards the hairpin, but he's going to have to do it the long way around, and he's not brave enough on the brakes, not deep enough. You still have that multi-team that Justin said. They are laps down. Currently the last running car in GTE, I believe, unless there's someone, yeah, that is the last place running GTE car that is currently in the mix. But they're just hanging out, and so I have a thing. Oh, and there it is. Jonas Walmart mistaken to Cunningham. Not quite enough for Sebastian to be able to take advantage. I am really worried, Justin. I think this is going to boil over eventually. Sebastian is going to get really frustrated in there. Jonas kind of outbroke himself, and Seb has the lead.
Yeah, it's boiling over right this moment, and they're entering a section that you don't want to be side by side in. And right there, I think Radicals, again, is trying to play this the smarter out of everybody in this entire position battle at this point. That they don't want to outdrive themselves. Wait for the right moment. Don't force it into a non-passing zone. And instead try and send it in a danger zone and cause problems, especially when you have traffic. Also, Bruno Spengler is showing that realer experience there where he knows this is a battle for position, has just backed off from this battle, even though I think he knows he's almost the same pace, if not quicker than these two.
Oh, these two even leaning on each other a little bit, and I think Bruno is going to say, I'm just going to come down pit road. Is what Bruno Spengler is going to say, and that might be for the best. Final pit stop surely for them with 14 minutes, roughly 7 laps left to go in this race, maybe 8. And look at that move from Radicals into turn 1. You want to talk about a brave dive? That's one of the deepest dives I've seen in a while. And Sebastian said, you know what, if you're going to block, you're going to get that, Jonas, and he immediately throws the block exiting turn 1. What a move there's from Sebastian Schmallenbach, but that's what happens, Justin. If the car I know they're defending, and I know you can say there's 8 laps left, but I don't think there's any way that red line green car was going to keep the Radicals car in the rear view. And I think all Jonas was going to likely do there was potentially cause an accident. He's late on the brakes again into the hairpin. And he actually got that car stopped pretty nicely. I didn't think he was going to get the car rotated quite like that, but he kind of forced Sebastian to throw a big hill haymaker like that down in towards turn 1.
Yeah, at that point, I think he said, you know what? If this is going to be done, and the amount of frustration was probably building up, I've got to send it. I'm surprised, too, that he didn't snap that car to the right because he actually bubbled it on the marbles, and a bubble for one of the red line cars again because of the loss of traction.
So we see now this red line green car go from 7th to 9th in a lap. You see David Williams cycling through in the 5th place running Virtual Racing School's car. Just had a replay of that incident towards turn 1, but man, this has been a troubled area with these red line cars here, Justin. They didn't get the strategy quite right. Of course, they had the issue with the fact they had to do that weird little splash and dash. Of course, there's still half a question on if Red Bull can make it, that Lorenzo kind of put out if the race goes an extra lap potentially. And we'll continue to hypothesize about that just to make the GTE win interesting. But, man, these red line guys are in not a great position. The Porsche 284 car, I mean, that car was at one point leading, Justin, now finds itself P8, and red line green not going great as well. They now find themselves P9.
Yeah, this car is got a problem, I think, again, because they, as I mentioned, the tire strategy was the one where you don't expect it because of the tire degradation. We're seeing the results of that now where they've gone right off the edge of the cliff and then some in pace.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that they're really having to deal with here and really struggling to deal with right now. And just monitoring your lead fight, by the way, Redline Black, we were talking, Justin, that maybe they'd have good speed on these old tires, but they just don't. The gap has opened up to 17 seconds since the start of this. And You know, we saw what Redline Green was initially doing on old tires when they tried it, and we said, hey, they might be, you know, they might be cooking with fire here, but yeah, nothing. This is more of a drop-off than I was expecting even from Max Benecke. At this point, I was expecting to see 9-10 seconds on the gap delta, not 17.8.
Yeah, hold on. There was a car in the grass there. Hold on, who was that?
I didn't see it, so I have no idea.
That was the Maui Racing team that was taking a bit of an excursion there. We see at the edge of the shot, and went back to the Redline Racing machine, Redline Black, who overshot the turn and went off into the sand trap.
Yeah, so that was just they actually they hit the wall on the inside at turn 1. We'll rewind that camera back a little bit so we can see it, but it's one of those things here at Sebring. Turn 1 is almost like a street course in some ways. You really want to push up close to the wall on your left-hand side, and you're going to see it just a little bit of boop right there. Doesn't look like much in slow motion, but it's enough that it throws that car out into the grass. And you also have to wonder a little bit, Justin, is there maybe suspension damage on that race car after that hit? Because whenever you brush that wall, you kind of brush it with the left front tires. We're now under 10 minutes to go.
Yeah, and that was more than a brush. That was a complete potential even wall ride just about with the tire itself. Not enough to actually go on top of the wall, but enough to boop it a bit towards the right. So I'm curious to see. I don't know if it's enough to actually cause a pit stop, but it's definitely got to be maybe a little concerned if they got any type of damage, because depending on how hard that hit, you can actually push the toe in.
Oh, we've got to fight.
Out straight.
We've got to fight. Apex has managed something we didn't figure, Justin. Apex has just made their last pit stop, and they currently run P2. I'm not sure what happened to Mitchell DeYoung, but he's fallen out of second place, and it is now the Kevin Ellis Jr. Apex Racing Team number 91. Gap is 3.8 seconds, and Mitchell will have 9 minutes to reel it in.
Something has to have happened here again. Ellis Jr. was able to stretch his run to lap 368, and we were talking about could he go long or even make it to the end. He went long, and well, that less amount of fuel that was talked about, Randy, is the difference to be able to get him in that position, because yes, DeYoung's faster on the track. However, just 13 seconds in the pits for Ellis Jr., 24 for DeYoung when DeYoung hit about 5-10 laps sooner.
The thing is, Mitchell isn't lap on lap. Huge amounts to the pace that he needs to reel this gap in. He needed about 3 or 4 tenths that last trip around the racetrack. He only reeled in about 400. So this has been cooking up the last couple of laps. We've just now found it. The fight for second place, 3.5 seconds. We have seen how big traffic can be. And here comes this Apex prototype. What are you doing? AAA Esports, Alexander Walters moving in the braking zone twice. Kevin Ellis Jr., that was well driven to not completely obliterate that Porsche. We might need to get a replay of that, because that was a textbook example, Justin, of what not to do in a GT car when you have a prototype hounding you. We'll cue the replay up, and if we can rewind it a little bit further back, it'd be great. But you're going to see 2 moves that Porsche makes, almost trying to let that DP go. And it's the thing every prototype driver will tell you. Do not try to move out of my way. I will pass you, hold your line. And watch what this Porsche does. First it moves over to the right, and then it sees that it moves back over to the left. That was well reacted there by Kevin. I'd say the vast majority of people would have ran that Porsche over and not felt bad about it.
Yeah, it was straight up simply Walters expecting him to go one way, guessing we're on the first way, then correcting to make sure the other way. Then Kevin Ellis Jr. is already in the process of switching back the other way. Yeah, that is something where that could have definitely been huge, because that GT machine. I mean, yes, there's a lot of times where people argue it's always a DP. That was it was in fault of the GT machine. And that's in some cases, in some of these events, yes, we wonder where's communication. Some of these drivers are focusing more on staying on the road than they are communicating, especially in the highest of echelons in iRacing. I mean, to be quite frank, they're not, in some cases, communicating over the radio as much as some may expect in, say, the other 26 plus splits for today's race.
And you shouldn't be relying on that anyways, Justin, because we mentioned it earlier, the fact that so many of these teams, you talked about when Redline was discussing the strategy, you know, many people aren't even using the in-sim radio. They're using their own VoIP. They may even be trying to hide it in some way if some of them are streaming, which we know Redline was. You cannot rely on the in-sim radio, and that includes the text chat, because then that's relying on, you know, the driver that's coming up on you reading the text chat. And, you know, then you're talking about suddenly now the driver behind you that you don't want to hit you. Instead of having them focusing on driving, you're now having them have to glance at the text chat. You should never really have to communicate verbally or through text with the drivers you're trying to pass. Even though, yes, it's a virtual sim and it's something we can do, it is in some ways one of the least safe things to do, especially when you have, what, 45 cars on track like we have, 40 cars on track. Imagine if everyone is talking to the cars around them at all times. You know, it'll be completely total.
Wallmeyer in trouble.
Oh, no.
And Wallmeyer, it looks like he overshot the corner, so the tires are going out, and it looks like Alpine Eagle Racing at the same time lost traction, so two different drivers were stacked up in the hairpin. In the closing stage of this race, he's already blinking the lights, mind you, telling Alpine Eagle Racing, hi, I'm here, consistently, and both of them blow the corner as a result.
Actually, Jonas didn't really make a mistake. There was a prototype in front of him. That was a reactionary move from Wallmeyer to jump out of the way. So wasn't Jonas's fault at all. But yeah, Alpine Eagle Racing, Marcus Urak, they have unfortunately found ways to be in the wrong place at the wrong time this week, or tonight rather. But unfortunate there. We're inside the final couple minutes here, Justin. We're still trying to keep an eye on this fight for second, third, and category in your prototype field. And well, that gap has really opened up, not in favor of Mitchell de Jong. 4 seconds right now to fight for second to third. Mitchell lost 9/10, I think, due to some traffic. Maybe has actually made a mistake. Didn't actually see personally what had happened, but right now 4 seconds to gap, and Kevin's opening that up. Mitchell needs, and he basically needs Kevin to catch a ton of GT traffic.
Yeah, and mind you, for everyone else, they need Rogers to somehow lose 1 second a lap. But here's the look now at de Jong. You can tell he's getting close. The problem is it's not close enough, and he's still got to get around traffic, mind you, in the same class, too, in Leo Racing Team DP2. That's not going to help, too. I don't think there's not even nearly enough laps unless Kevin Atlas Jr. gets some type of bad luck.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be like a 4-second holdup for Kevin. He basically has to catch some traffic and then maybe get loose and get sideways, and that's the only way anything is ever going to play a part in this as they currently roll. Let's see, where is currently Josh Rogers, as I believe we might be on the 1-to-go lap. I am not sure. It is 3 minutes and 20 seconds left on the clock, and he is at Tower. It's going to be tight whether this is whether we are coming to 1 to go or 2 to go for Josh Rogers. We may end up getting that extra lap we were talking about.
Yeah, right now, at least on my end, I'm not sure what's going on your side of things, Randy. There is an estimate of about 2 laps. And there is a thing, too, where it's popped up many times. Even if you get to the halfway part of the track, the leader must see the white flag to be able to get the final lap. So there's been races that have come down to the same straightaway I've seen in terms of how close the timing is. Right now we're in a case where it might be around the halfway point of the circuit where they get close to that mark.
Yep, and we're coming from a 2 to go right here, so it'll be 2 to go signal to the drivers as they work across start finish. So that is going to get, I think, potentially that extra lap, but maybe one more, because we're still thinking Lorenzo Bonder, one of our associates here at RaceSpot TV, thinking that maybe Red Bull Racing Esports having some sort of fuel issue if the race goes a lap longer than they potentially expected to. Because it's important to remember, Justin, that Red Bull car did come down at basically the very, very first opportunity it could to be able to make it to the end.
Here's the thing, though. I think Sebastian Job knew that potential possibility. There was many times in open space, he was running the 156s. I think he was maybe saving. Here's the thing, and there was a good point mentioned by some of the viewers for tonight's action, where it's easier to save on fresh tires, in my opinion, and save the fuel than push on old tires. Job had the benefit of having the fresh tires to save.
That he definitely did Sebastian Job as he currently cycled through here, and especially here, Justin, not only did he have the benefit in terms of being on fresh tires and it just be easier for him, he had the opportunity to be on fresh tires and save while his opposition was on old tires and falling backwards. So he wasn't worried about potentially falling back into 81 because the car behind him was just running so far off the pace of Max Benecke because the tire strategy just really didn't work out. And that's the greatest thing when you're trying to save fuel. It's not just being able to save fuel, it's being able to save fuel and knowing you don't have to worry about the car behind you.
But don't forget about GT3's class where Verfollegt Sim Racing Green is in front. It was bad luck, unfortunately, for Williams Esports Chill Blast to have what happened to them. But it's improbable, absolutely, for Verfollegt with the damage they had to be able to lead as the estimated white flag potentially this time.
Yeah, we're definitely looking at it right here. This will be the final lap in the 2020 Sebring 12 hours here on iRacing. Josh Rogers into turn 1, 2, and now 3 for the final time as they work around the racetrack. Where is your Red Bull BMW? They are currently working down the back straightaway. They'll be seeing the white flag in about 10 seconds time, and I'm trying to see if Verfollegt might get lapped. I don't think they will. I think all cars will be, well, Verfollegt still got a lap and a half left.
Yeah, a lot of these competitors are in good situations, including Verfollegt with some very big leads, to say the least, right now. Give a shout out, though, to the second car in that same class for GT3. Black Star Racing really impressed me today, and they had a solid drive just about a few turns away from the podium.
So here we go then. Midway point of the lap for Joshua Rogers at Tower Corner. White flag has been displayed to all the competitors, and the run now into Bishop. You think about 6 hours ago when we started this segment of the broadcast, it was Apex Racing Team, the number 90 car that was leading. Michele Constantini looked like a man from another planet. He looked like he looks in the IndyCar at Indianapolis every month of May here in the iRacing service. But it wasn't meant to be for that team. It was VRS Coanda Sport who has had the great strategy, they've had the great pace, and they have worked out to a 1 minute and 23 second lead over the second place running car of Apex Racing Team number 91. Through turn 17 for the final time, and Josh Rogers from Germany and not Australia wins the 2020 iRacing 12 hours of Sebring. Sebastian Job in the GTE division is still working his way through. He is heading down into the final couple sequence of corners, getting ready to begin the run onto the back straightaway, through the S's and into Le Mans for the final time. Sebastian Job will work down the back straightaway. 26 seconds, the advantage over Maximilian Benecke. The last 3 hours, the GTE lead fight was the one to watch. It was really interesting to watch, but technical issues, unfortunately, seem to have hampered Team Redline, forcing them to make an additional pit stop and really try to push the strategy. And it's going to be Red Bull Racing Esports to win here in the GTE division of the 2020 iRacing 12 hours of Sebring. And that takes us down to our final race leading car in category. Verfollegt Sim Racing Green was not leading this race up until about an hour and a half ago. It was looking like it was going to be Williams Esports Chill Blast, but an incident with some faster class traffic moved this car. Look at the right rear of that wing. This is not the way you would think a car winning at Sebring would look, with a 52-second advantage over second place. But Verfollegt Sim Racing Green, represented by Hayden Burns, out of Sunset Bend for the final time. They will win the GT3 division of the 2020 iRacing 12 hours of Sebring.
What a night, what a race, to say the very least, for all of these class winners. And the fuel strategy didn't come in the end, and just man oh man, some big victories for some of these teams.
What a run for everybody here, Justin, as we're seeing some people in chat.